All right, let's get started. I'm going to call this meeting to order. That get everyone's attention. Sorry. Thank you for your patience in us starting a little late. Welcome to the San Ramon Valley Unified School District's Board of Education meeting for October. We want to let the public know that we are video recording this meeting. The recording is being live streamed on the district's YouTube channel. So we'll start with attendance. Travis?
Hello, everyone. I'm Travis Hodges, student trustee to the board, and it's great to be here tonight with all of you.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. I'm Rachel Hurd and I represent Trustee Area 5.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jesse Van Zee and I represent Area 1.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out and joining us tonight. I'm Susanna Ordway, representing Area 4.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Shelley Clark and I represent Area 2.
And I'm Laura Bratt and I represent Area 3. Travis, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And before we move on to staff recognition, we just have a little announcement about facilities. So CJ can take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much. As was shared earlier, I do apologize, but we are having some work happening right now in our restrooms. As soon as that work is resolved, we'll let you know. But in the meantime, we do not have restroom access for you. Our wonderful neighbors right across the street, if you exit the building and go across the parking lot, have agreed to open up their facilities for us. So we will make sure that we have staff to help show you the right way. But hopefully we'll have that resolved soon. But until then, we want to thank our neighbors for allowing us and our community to use those facilities for the time being. Our apologies for the inconvenience. And the work was not planned, so please know that we did not schedule this.
And with that in mind, without limiting anyone's public comment, if there are folks that are going to be discussing the same types of things in public comment, if there's an opportunity to kind of maybe couple up with some of those public comments, we'd appreciate it. At the same time, you know, we do want you to make your public comment, so don't feel like you have to not make it. But okay, so we'll move on to student and staff recognition. So tonight we have the privilege of recognizing a group of outstanding students for their participation in the American Legion Boys and Girls State and American Legion Girls State programs. The students were nominated by their high schools and selected by the American Legion and the American Legion Auxiliary to participate in a week-long program in Sacramento. The program offered a hands-on immersive experience in civic responsibility, focusing on the structure of city, county, and state governments. Students engaged in legislative sessions, court proceedings, and law enforcement presentations, gaining valuable insight into the privileges and responsibilities of citizenship. This program was established in 1938 and has produced over 2 million graduates nationwide. Several of the students chosen for the selective educational opportunity are here with us tonight. As future leaders, we encourage them to share the knowledge and experience they've acquired with their peers and to carry it forward into their future pursuits. We are pleased to recognize the following students who participated in the Girls State program and will invite them to come up to the front. We have Tanishka Chawbla, Kaylin Griffin, Danielle Robinson, and Sophie Meyer. You can, yeah, just come stand up here. Yeah. And then the students who were chosen for the girls and boys state programs, we have Sydney Spezia, Ved Joshi, Rishi Barath, Paloma Kimball, Nadia Seymour, Allison Cook, Hanson Yo, and our own student board member, Travis Hodges. And we have representatives who are here with us tonight to join us for a photo. And then if the board, if we could come around too. Thank you to all the amazing students here. Great work. All right. So now we're going to report actions taken in closed session. So at this evening's closed session, the board took the following actions. The board voted 5-0 to accept the separation agreement with employee number 18273. And the board made the following appointment in a 5-0 vote effective November 1st, 2024. And that's Danny Hillman as Assistant Superintendent of Business Services. So congratulations to Danny. All right, so may I have a motion to accept the minutes from the September 10th, 2024 board meeting?
A motion to accept the minutes from the board meeting.
Second,
The motion was made by Board Member Clark and seconded by Board Member Van Heard.
Aye.
Board Member Van Zee.
aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Great, and next we'll move on to agenda approval. Can I get a motion to accept the agenda?
I move to approval for the agenda.
I'll second that.
The motion was made by Board Member Ordway and seconded by Board Member Van Zee. Roll call vote. Student Board Member Hodges.
Aye.
Board Member Heard.
Aye.
Board Member Van Zee.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
All right, so next we'll move on to our consent agenda. So consent items are considered routine in nature and are approved by combining them into a single vote. Only a member of the board may request that a consent item be removed from the consent agenda to be considered and voted on separately. The public may comment on a consent item before the board approves the agenda. I'm just going to quickly double check to make sure none of these are. Does anyone on the board have any questions or want to pull anything?
I have one on the ratification of purchase orders. I need to abstain on one purchase order, so I don't know if we want to pull the whole thing or if we should just have me abstain on the particular PO.
I'm fine with putting that in the minutes if you're comfortable.
Okay, so it's PO 502150. And it's because.
I would like to pull the resolution number 4624 through 25, and that's primarily, this is a budget document, just kind of looking at some of the high level items of, increase in revenue, increase in costs. And I think given with all the budget cuts that we have coming up, I think daylighting this would be just a helpful thing for the public. So I'd like to pull that.
What was the agenda number?
Agenda number
1312.
1312. Yeah, thank you. And I have like a question and a comment about another one, but I don't know if it requires it being pulled. What's our
I kind of had the same
policy on
something
that?
about that too. I think it's okay for us to make is it okay for us to make a comment without pulling? Yeah, yes.
Okay, so one, I just want to thank, I think W. Pettish is to thank for this. We have a preview of textbooks that we kind of get in our agenda packets. And for a long time, we've been kind of talking about how the board can be helped as we're reviewing all of these books that are coming through. And I just want to thank everybody that's a part of that team, because I see in this agenda packet a very thorough, detailed summary of why the book was requested, the value in it, any sensitive materials highlighted for us, reviews are pulled for us. It's phenomenal. And I really appreciate that. And I think it provides transparency for the public. It helps the board as we prepare for this. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, because I know we've been chatting about that for a little bit. And I just want to acknowledge that I really appreciate that when I saw that on the agenda.
Yeah, and I ditto that 100%. So thank you for all your hard work and staff, not just administration. So.
And then this one is kind of a comment, just as we look at these, so line items under 50,000, we typically get this, and there's a whole code section. And as I've talked about, sometimes my question is answered when I understand exactly what cost code it's going with. And I wonder how difficult it would be to put like a cost code like key at the bottom of each one, so we know that, 5388 is this. And so that way, when I'm looking at it and I go, oh, okay, that makes sense why it's there. Just as we're really getting granular on budgets right now. But I know I can't unilaterally ask that move. So I don't know how we propose that, CJ.
Can that just be direction that's given or?
Well, I appreciate the feedback. I think what I would recommend is the first thing I can do is go back and talk with the business team operationally,
Feasibility.
feasibility.
Yeah, okay.
And then what I can do is provide the board an update as a whole in writing. And then we can kind of determine next steps from there. But I think feasibility will be a big part of it. And so that the public is aware, I think, anything's possible, right? We just want to understand what we need to do to make that happen. And if it changes anything, I don't want to give the perception that we can't do that, right?
Yeah.
So I think we can. I just want to better understand from our business team how we need to make that happen.
Perfect.
And then we can bring the board more information about that.
That's all I have.
Yeah, and I also wanted to, just wanted to take a minute to just say thank you to and congratulations to our newly appointed members of the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee. So that's item number 13.13 on the consent agenda, and we really appreciate their engagement and their commitment to our school district. So with that, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda minus 13.12, which will be pulled?
I move to approve the consent agenda with those provisions.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Ordway. Roll call vote, Student Board Member Hodges.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Van Zee.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
I forgot to mention, so there is a revision on item 13.1, consideration of approval of certificated personnel changes, just to make that note. So, all right. So I want to take a minute just to review our public comment, how it works in our board public meetings. So if you'd like to make a public comment during the meeting, you can find yellow speaker cards at the table by the door. Please speak to a staff member if you have any questions. And you will have an opportunity to make comment on agendized items when we come to that item. For comments on items that are not on the agenda, please submit your card to our public comment for non-agendized items on tonight's agenda. Each speaker has a time limit of 3 minutes. There will be a timer shown on the screen, so you will know when your time is coming to a close. This time limit will be enforced to ensure fairness. Please be aware that we may interrupt you and redirect you to the correct time to speak if your comment relates to a different agendized item or if it is not within our jurisdiction. We are a public education jurisdiction. As president, I reserve the right to announce a last call for speaker card submissions. Usually what I do is I ask that you have your speaker cards in after the report is done and before we start the public comment period for that agenda item. The views expressed during public comment are those of the individual speaker. The absence of a response from the board or district staff does not imply agreement. The district believes in an exclusive, welcoming, and safe environment during its meetings for all in our community. Please be mindful that students are in the room and watching virtually. We are all here to support them and to support their educational experience. And we are really very grateful that you're all here today, and we appreciate your engagement and your willingness to engage with us during this public meeting. So next we have reports to the board. And our first is 10.1, which is a school highlight for Diablo Vista Middle School and Principal Jeff Osborne.
All right, good evening, members of the school board and members of the community. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Jeff Osborne, principal at Diablo Vista Middle School. I am blessed to be in this position, and I'm excited to share with you how we're building stronger school community by focusing on 3 key pillars, including academics, inclusion, and character development. You'll see Eduardo up here, our school mascot, who was at the Run for Education this last weekend. It's great to see so many community members there. The 3 pillars really do represent our core values of a foundation of everything that we do. By focusing on academics, inclusion, and character development, we're ensuring that every student has the opportunity to authentically connect to DVMS and to grow and succeed, not only as scholars, but as engaged citizens and compassionate individuals. First, let's talk about academics. In August of 2024, you'll see a group of students from rising sixth graders through recently graduated seniors in high school who got to speak to our staff members and engage and talked with them about what it means to create engagement in schools and what makes them want to show up every single day and work as hard as they do. Our CASP scores are strong. However, I'm not resting on the status quo. We're going to keep working hard to ensure that we continue to increase our CASP scores. We're changing our schedule, and I'm communicating with our students about the importance of working hard every day in class. Our STEM focus has been around for over 25 years. We were established in 2000, and it's really great to have so many opportunities for our students to participate in Science Bowl, Science Fair, and our Math Counts program has 160 kids hanging out for 2 hours after school on Fridays. Just have those academically talented programs. We also have our before and after school intervention classes to really support those who need extra support in a variety of ways, reading, writing, and organization. The thing I'd like to focus on academics is actually our Generation Citizen program. And it goes beyond just the awesome things that we do with our STEM programs. It is something that we have been doing for a couple years now. It engages students in real world learning. It's why we've implemented it here at our school. Through Generation Citizen, we're able to develop all the character traits of the SRVUSD learner profile. Students are able to identify a community issue, a focus issue, and a root cause. Then they work together as a team to develop a goal. They contact stakeholders, and I think some board members were contacted by our students last year, and they develop an action plan, steps they can take to create real change in the community. Instead of me telling you about it, let me take a quote that some of our students got to meet Superintendent Kamick a few weeks back, and I take a picture with him. Let me read some words that they had to share about the program. Something that I really loved about Generation Citizen was that it was greatly student-based. We had our amazing teacher, Mrs. Montgomery, help us execute the project and guide us. But when it came to emailing the district or making polls for students to fill out or putting together the poster board to represent our class period, we got to do it ourselves. And I think that is a really valuable experience for all students because we learned how people in the real world would fix something they had an issue with. This project greatly benefits students of all ages, and I'm so grateful to have an opportunity to participate in Generation Citizen. That's absolutely brilliant. We also have another program called Eagles Plus Time. Eagles Plus Time is our student support period. It's time built into the school day to support students and staff members. The time allows most students to get a jump start on their homework and allows others who are absent or missed a concept to get additional support from specific teachers that they signed up to attend. Again, this time is built into the day for kids and staff alike to not have to work during their lunches or stay for extended periods of time after school. We couldn't offer nearly as many remediation and extension opportunities without our Eagles Plus Time. Our second pillar is inclusion, which is more than just accommodating diverse learners. It's about fostering a school culture where every student feels like they belong. We are working hard to ensure students from all backgrounds, learning styles, and abilities come together in one community. We have a diverse student population with students in our amazing SDC program in mild, moderate, and intensive services, along with our resource population and students with 504s and those qualified as GATE, and our academically talented program, a mix not found at any other SRVUSD middle school. Our commitment to inclusion involves culturally responsive teaching that honors the diverse experiences of our students and differentiated instruction to meet individual needs. But inclusion does go beyond academic support. It's about creating a sense of unity and shared purpose. Our goal is for all students, regardless of their background or abilities, to feel valued, respected, and connected. We offer a wide variety of classes, as seen on the screen, that go beyond the STEM focus I already mentioned. One new class that I want to highlight is our Unified PE TA class, where students in our moderate to advanced intensive SDC program are partnered with students and led by a PE teacher who facilitates the individualized learning and engagement of each student. Check out this video here. When we come together as when we come together as one, we create a learning environment that's not just equitable, but also collaborative and supportive. And that makes me happy. Check out this video from a lunchtime activity that our ASB students put on recently. Student who's receiving speech services, getting up there and boldly completing the lyrics in front of hundreds of their classmates. I'm so incredibly proud of her and proud of all of our Eagles. Finally, we bring us to our third pillar of character development. Academic success is important, but we also want to nurture kind, responsible, and empathetic individuals through programs and messaging like Dude, Be Nice, Character Strong, and No Place for Hate. We're fostering a school community rooted in respect, compassion, and inclusion. Dude, Be Nice focuses on simple acts of kindness and giving students a voice to stand up for themselves and others. With over a decade of experience as an assistant principal, I found myself needing to coach students up in how they can stand up for themselves and others. And having a simple phrase, a sentence starter, a stem to go with is something they've found really helpful. Our Character Strong program, it has been led by students and for students. Our Character Strong program is being implemented now in the month of October, and our No Place for Hate program is also getting started later this month, where students take a pledge to end bullying and create a safer, more inclusive environment for everyone. These initiatives has led to real changes in our school culture, with students stepping up as leaders, reducing bullying incidents, and fostering a supportive atmosphere. As we look to the future, we are committed to expanding these programs. Ultimately, we want every student to leave our school not only academically prepared, but also as thoughtful, compassionate, and engaged members of society. Thank you for your time this evening. I look forward to continuing to work together as we ensure our school remains a place where every student can develop all aspects of the SRVUSD learner profile. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Jeff. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I love the, I've never actually heard of Dude, Be Nice. Is that something you guys created on site, or is that from an outside program?
You know, we sent two individuals to the CATA conference last year, and I sent them with a mission: come back with things we can do that are going to help with the messaging here on campus. It's actually a company, and I like the phrase "dude, knock it off," preferably, but "Dude, Be Nice" also captures it
Yeah.
very nicely. And yeah, it's a separate company. They have lessons that go with it. And obviously, you can see our staff has worn all those shirts, and they wear mostly every Friday. And we even got some for our leadership students. And you see the kids walking around with "Dude, Be Nice" shirts.
That's great.
It's just creating a great culture.
And I think that's great because that's approachable for middle school students. So I love the creativity. I mean, I love everything else about your presentation too, but that's the first time I've seen that. So that's really, really great that you incorporated that.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you for your presentation and all the different programs that you're doing at your school. And I also love that you're building, right, the well-roundedness of the students, not only their academics, but also social emotional, and then the community character development. That's really, really important for everybody, right? I do love especially the Eagles Plus time, because I know that if a student is sick or they just don't understand, but then they, they don't have time, right, to really dive back into learning that. That's when I think it becomes a problem, because it's the catching up, right? It's a time to catch up. That I think gives students a difficult time to really going deeper into their learning. So I love that you have built-in special time for catching up or going deeper. And a few years ago, I was honored to actually receive a stuffed eagle from Del Vista. Yes. And now I can give him a name. It's Eduardo.
Eduardo, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all.
I really like that you touched on all areas to make as Susanna said, a well-rounded student, especially your intervention classes. Because I think it's so important, especially since COVID with the learning loss and everything, to give our students as much support as we can as they move forward. And I love Generation Citizen. I have participated in it the last 3 years with the students, and they are so excited and come up with so many good ideas and so many solutions to problems that I think it's a great program, and they learn about how things work. So great presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so next we have 10.2, which is, substitute, 10.2 resolutions. Substitute Educators Day, which is November 22nd, and our Director of Certificated Human Resources, Meredith Bullock, will give us a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I am here this evening to recognize our classified and certificated substitutes. We have both in our school district for Substitute Educators Day on November 22nd. And we often refer to our substitute teachers as guest teachers because we just feel like they're guests in our classroom across the district. Currently, we have over 500 substitute teachers in our district, and we have so many, and people continually want to become substitutes. Our substitutes are the definition of flexible, and they are constantly changing and willing to support all our students at all our sites. They fill in for classroom teachers, support providers, clerical, maintenance, paraeducator positions, and many more positions throughout the entire district. We want to thank our substitute teachers who step in and ensure that our learning continues in every single one of our classrooms. Their commitment allows our schools to function smoothly. We recognize their invaluable contributions to our district, and we truly appreciate everything they do to make a difference in all of our schools. So we hope you join us on Friday, November 22nd in just thanking every single substitute that we have across our district.
Can I take a second to ask a question about substitutes? I don't know if this is the right place. I'm curious if we're still struggling with a substitute shortage or.
Absolutely not.
Oh, good. Okay.
We actually have so many applicants right now that we paused our application process.
Oh, okay.
Because we
Okay.
have so many coming in right now.
Okay.
And we're
Okay.
providing training for them once a month.
Excellent. Excellent. And then one more question.
Yeah.
And then I know we have the teacher residency program. Is some of our substitutes, is that a pipeline for that as well? For us, are we utilizing? Excellent. Oh, you mic. Thank you very much, Meredith. Okay, so next we have National Native American Heritage Month, and that's our Director of Equity, Hong Nguyen.
Good evening, board members, superintendent, assistant superintendent, staff, students, and community. November is National Native American Heritage Month. We acknowledge that this country was home to generations of indigenous peoples long before the arrival of European explorers, and that these tribes had a unique and vibrant culture. It is important for us to share a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that SRVUSD sits on the traditional lands of the Chochenyo, Miwok, and Ohlone people and pay respects to elders, both past and present. And in addition to land acknowledgement, we always want to make sure that we're doing more than that by giving back to our community. Our students and staff celebrate Native American Heritage Month through read-alouds, projects, acknowledgements, research, and so much more. It is our goal to make sure that we are promoting learning of Native American people and history so we can become more appreciative and aware of different cultures, traditions of our past, present, and future. In our district, for our students, so we do have 0.3% of our students as American Indian, which is stated within our state name, but Native American within our district. And in terms of our certificated staff, we're looking at 0.6. And so very few of our staff members also are Native American, but we want to make sure that we are still recognizing this particular group. And here is a quote from Joy Harjo, and it's an American poet. Remember that you are all people and that all people are you. And before we close, I wanted to turn it over to one of our staff members who's also Native American. And Rochelle Goldenberg works at California High School as a wellness center coordinator as well as a social worker. And so I wanted to give her the floor to share a little bit more.
Pahwe Yuahat Duasak. Chak Ayahat Kagwantan Nawach Hayati. Lit Kaya Hat Itzi. Achna Da Ahani Chak Puri Hit. Tuksakan Kakwakan Ayahat Ya Adi Ayahat Linidi. My name is Kakwe. My name in Tlingit. I am Eagle. My clan is Kagwantan. My mother is not Native, but my father is. I am from the Eagle's Nest House. My family is from the destroyed village of Tuxacan, which is in Southeast Alaska. My father's clan is Dog Salmon. And I introduced myself to my elders and relatives. Forgive me if I have mispronounced anything or if I have made a mistake. It's custom for us to introduce ourselves within a Native community or anywhere using our name. My name is Kahwe amongst my community, but my name also given to me by birth is Rochelle. I'm honored to be able to be here and speak to the board and to our community and to remind you that we are here. Native people are not a part of history, they're a part of current day. We have many Native American students, one of them who, if she's listening, will know I'm talking about her, but who walked into my office one day, saw the things on my wall and said, "Hey, I know that. My mom has that on their wall." She found out there was another member of her own tribe within her school and found out we're related, kind of. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you very much for acknowledging the Native community that's amongst us. This is the largest urban Indian population of mixed heritage Native people in the entire country in the San Francisco Bay Area because many different tribes are represented. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle, for coming and sharing your story. And just a reminder for us to just make sure that we are recognizing November as National Native American Heritage Month. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions or? Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. All right. So I don't believe we have public comment for this for 10.2 on messages. Okay, so we're going to move on to 10.3, which is public comment for non-agenda items. So this is an opportunity for the community to speak on the record about things that are not on the agenda. I am going to stop taking speaker cards. This is the last call for them. So if anyone has one that they still want to submit, raise your hand, let me know. Okay. Oh. Oh, yeah, that's a ways away. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so first up, for non-agendized is Adrian Foster, and after Adrian will be Mike Arata. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Yes, sorry.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, for the opportunity to speak. I wanted to talk about the posted policies for math in the district website. I caught some discrepancies that I thought I could bring to your attention. So the posted policies for San Ramon Valley Unified School District regarding math pathways, math placement, and A to G requirements need to be reviewed. My junior student was told to take classes outside of the district to meet the math pathway requirements that align with A to G courses required to enter the UC and Cal State universities. That is not our choice. My student does not want to take online classes outside of the district. We follow the math pathways posted by the district all high school students must have access to classes at school, in my opinion. Outside institutions are an option and should not be recommended by counselors for core classes. As a parent, I was misled by the district's posted policies. The amendments needed for transparency and accountability are attached to an email that they are in the body of the email that I sent earlier today. But here they are. There is where it says high school math pathways, anything past AP statistics at the bottom right. I recommend that you post a note that notes that those are elective classes and no space guaranteed in high schools. The students may need to take online or outside institutions at their own expense. That's the first amendment that needs to be made. In the sample of mathematics pathways, anything past honors calculus, AB or BC, and honors calculus or, AP Calc, BMC. Math, you should note that math classes beyond Algebra 2 are elective and placement is not guaranteed in high schools. San Ramon Valley Unified School District recommends taking these online at outside institutions at your own expense. San Ramon Valley Unified School District requires only 2 years of high school math for graduation. So I'm just asking for transparency here. And then there's another document that I looked at when my daughter was entering high school, which says San Ramon Valley Unified School District 4-year plan worksheet. And I think that in the math, it should, you guys should notice there that classroom placement is not guaranteed and students must seek math classes through outside institutions at their own expenses because there's also noting there that 4 years are recommended for math and you guys only recommend 2. So, as I said, I have a junior student currently without a math class, which I never thought I would utter those words, but thank you for having me. And I hope you guys make those corrections so there's more transparency when we enroll our kids.
Thank you. Great. So next up is Mike Arata, and after Mike Arata is Charlotte.
Last month, your school celebrated Banned Books Week with related library displays in high and middle schools, including some of the pornography from extensive library porn collections, now with effective dares by adult authority figures for minors to check out the porn. So I expected originally to speak on your administrator's blanket prohibitions against community member taxpayer visits to these perverse displays, despite board policy 1250's encouragement of school visits by parents and community members. But meanwhile, your awful 2023-24 state test scores have been exposed comprehensively by EdSource, though not so far by district website, your district website that I've seen. I'm guessing that you hope to hide the scores until after Election Day with 2 of you plus Measure Q on the ballot. So what the sign shows are the low and declining percentages of students at 4 middle schools and all 4 high schools who met or exceeded a basic testing standard. All of your schools' testing percentages are shown now at betterschools.notmoretaxes.com. Parents will be able to find them there. In 2024 testing, 26 of your schools reached new lows in English and/or math and/or science, with 6 of those schools, including Monte Vista, showing new lows in all 3. Predictably, SRVUSD will again blur its very poor CAA-SPP test results, first by leaving off 2015 through 2019 pre-COVID numbers in the present comparison, instead comparing 2024 results only to already poor 2022 and 23 numbers. And secondly, by comparing results to the rest of Contra Costa County or California as a whole, rather than say to Palo Alto or Pleasanton or Dublin Unified. As the sign shows, at least 4 of 8 middle schools and 3 of the high schools have declined scandalously in math and/or science. And the numbers in general are not what should be expected of a district with the socioeconomics of the San Ramon Valley. The especially miserable performance of San Ramon Valley High the site of so many scandals, including its own Proud Banned Books porno display, is a significant contributor to poor performance overall. But Cal High and now Monte Vista also contribute substantially to overall low numbers. Meanwhile, Doherty Valley and the district's high-achieving Asian students in general, even with their own test result drops from pre-COVID levels, still help prevent aggregated results from dropping even lower. Another EdSource chart, not here today, but it's on the website, also featured at betterschoolsnotmoretaxes.com, shows the district's alarming racial disparities in testing. The district's so-called deep learning is in fact a deep fake. Defeat of Measure Q would hopefully mean fewer indoctrinators, fewer porn purveyors, and fewer prevaricators.
Thank you, Mr. Arata. After Mr. Arata is Charlotte, and then after Charlotte will be Natalie Chen and Caitlin Wang.
That was quite a segue. This sign was legally permitted for me to own. This campaign recently doxed me, my 79-year-old father, and both of my brothers, which is an extraordinarily bad idea because my brother is a retired Navy SEAL, and for security reasons, I have not told him this yet. So I just want the misbehavior to stop. I know that people on the board are very aware of this campaign and their actions, and we're sick of it. 2 years ago was enough, and it's even worse this time. So let's make it past November 5th. I don't want I'm not the only person that's been doxxed or anything else. There are other people. I don't have the right to speak for them. They're welcome to do that on their own. I made the sign a lot prettier and a lot friendlier. This is what our school district should be about.
Thank you, Charlotte. Next up is Natalie Chen and Caitlin Wang, and after the two of them is Mom for Education. Oh, okay. While they're getting set up, Mom for Education had to leave, so after these two will be James Aiden Reed or Aiden James Reed.
Good evening, everyone.
My name is Natalie.
My name is Caitlin.
We are the Scouts of Troop 36, also students of Diablo Vista Middle School.
I would like to propose the idea of adding an afternoon break time to our bell schedule.
As a sixth grader, our lunch time is sometimes as early as 10:55 a.m.
Every day, my friends and I are hungry in the afternoon.
Sometimes we feel too hungry to be focused for class.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Natalie and Caitlin. Next up is James Aiden Reed.
My name is Aiden Reed. I'm here as part of my earning my community citizen badge. Glad to see my principal give an update on DVMS. I wanted to know there's low enrollment in elementary schools. What do you see for the future is for Diablo Vista Middle School staying open?
Thank you, Aiden. Because this is not on our agenda, we're not able to answer the question. But if you could speak with one of our staff members, we'll ask one of the staff members to meet with you, and they can probably answer the question for you. Okay? It's a public meeting, and so if it's not agendized, we're not able to discuss it because the public's not aware of the subject being discussed. It's a whole thing you'll learn about in gov class as a senior. All right, so next up, and I apologize for not giving fair warning. Next up is Nikisha Evers-Lyles, and after Nikisha is Dr. Rhiannon Shires.
Good evening. I'm here today to address a very disappointing incident that occurred this past Saturday at Doherty Valley High School. Over the weekend, Doherty Valley hosted a men's basketball tournament and some of the games were played in the auxiliary gym on campus. I arrived on campus shortly before the game and started and took a seat in the bleachers. During the game, some of the kids that were updating the scoreboard accidentally added points to the wrong team score after a made basket. It was clearly an honest mistake. The parent sitting next to me, who has a son that was playing for Freedom High School, tried to get the attention of the group that was managing the scorekeeping on the side of the gym so that she could let them know. She kind of waved her hands and called out to get their attention. After a moment or so, two men that were sitting and talking to one another on the bleachers in front of us turned around their seats and looked upward toward her. Both of the men proceeded to raise their voices at her and chastise her and told her to be quiet for trying to address the issue with the score. The first gentleman, based on a quick Google search I performed, is the men's varsity basketball coach at Doherty Valley. He scolded her, raised his voice and said, "This is my gym. I'm in charge of this gym and you need to be quiet." And then he motioned his hands like this for her to stop talking. As you can imagine, she was completely embarrassed and shocked that she was chastised by two men that she had never seen before and didn't have any encounters with. She handled the situation with a lot of grace. I didn't say a word while this was going on because honestly, I was uncomfortable and nervous, and I've only visited the school one other time prior to Saturday. There was a gentleman who was sitting next to the basketball coach. He too chided her and told her she didn't have a right to speak. When the head basketball coach got up and walked away, the second gentleman remained in his seat. A parent from Freedom walked by that second guy and told him in a calm voice, I saw it. The first thing he said was, "You need to learn how to respect women. You don't speak to women that way." And so I thought things were going to settle down, honestly. But a few minutes later, the guy turns around, the second guy turns around to me and starts raising his voice at me and kind of lunging his hands toward me. And he looked at me and said, "What, you too? You too?" I had no idea what he was talking about because I was sitting there quietly watching the game and whispering to my husband about my daughter's ballet recital. I have no idea why a man that I don't know, that I've never seen before, would be so completely and utterly disrespectful to me, but it was completely and inappropriate. It was utterly shameful. The unacceptable behavior that we endured in that gym was quite troubling. And none of the women that's on campus. I've spoken to the two other women. They share the same concerns that I do. I think it would benefit the site administration to provide appropriate training, education, and expectations of conducts for ambassadors of its schools. I'm personally not even comfortable going back to Doherty Valley until something like this is addressed appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikisha. Next up is Dr. Renanan Shires, and after her is Laura Finko.
Hello, I am Dr. Rhiannon Shires, a clinical psychologist, also an educational psychologist, a mother of 4 children who all attended this district, and a grandparent of 2. I'm also a member of the American Association of University Women. As Americans, we all have the fundamental right to raise our children and instill our values in them. As parents, we can and should play an active role in supporting our children's education. We have the right to tell our own children what they can and can't read. But I do not have the right to determine how you raise your children, nor what your child can read. Our freedom stops when they infringe on the rights and freedom of others. My rights do not supersede yours, nor do your rights supersede mine. In America, we have always recognized that people will not always agree. This is why our founding fathers advocated for and wrote the First Amendment, which protects the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press. Our country was founded on the principles of freedom of speech. Restricting access to books not only violates these principles, but also hinders our children's ability to develop critical thinking skills and understand diverse perspectives. In every public space, including public schools, our children are exposed to people from various backgrounds who have various identities. The targeting against marginalized groups is disheartening. We are a diverse country filled with differing beliefs, and it is not my place nor yours nor the school districts to dictate whose beliefs are right and who should be oppressed. Our individual rights are protected so far as they don't suppress anyone else's rights, and imposing one's beliefs on morality through censorship of reading materials in schools is an act of suppressing other children's rights to self-expression, access to knowledge, and to practice their own beliefs. While every parent has the right to guide their own children's reading, we cannot impose our individual standards on an entire school community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shires. Next is Laura Finko. After Laura Finko is Rian Dendizams.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I am making these comments as an individual. You know, month after month, we sit here and we listen to the looming alleged dangers that seem to be living in our high school libraries. These dangers of allowing or having accessible, diverse literature for our students. As the previous speaker spoke very eloquently about these dangers. But the real danger is when an entitled individual bypasses our safety protocols and makes his way onto one of our school campuses without first stopping at the school office to get a visitor's badge, goes into one of our high school libraries where there are students present because our libraries are open to our students before school, during school, and after school, refuses to identify himself when confronted by our teacher librarian, and refuses to leave when asked because there are students present. That is where the danger is for our schools. And in this time, in our society, we have a word for that. That's called being an intruder. We have another word, it's called being creepy. Because as we continue to allow false accusations, false information being spewed with the intent of agitating, it's harassment. It's targeting our students, it's targeting our teachers, and it has to stop. Now, I know that you as a board, you have your hands tied because there are certain unalienable rights that individuals have. But we as a community do not need to stand for it. As we heard with Diablo Vista Middle School, there is no room for hate, not here, not in the SRVUSD. There is no more room for the lies that are spread. And if you are unwilling to put a stop to it on your own, we do not need to stand here, sit here, and listen to it any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Next up is Rian Dendizams, and after them is Bob Ellen.
Hello, my name is Rian Vinzans. I am a former Cal High student. I graduated in 2018 for context, and I still live in this community. I would like to talk a little bit about a concept known as the tolerance paradox. This is something I believe is very relevant when it comes to the discussion about the presence of queer materials and topics in our schools. The tolerance paradox describes how, in the face of unlimited tolerance, the intolerant will eventually take over because their intolerant beliefs were tolerated. We as a community strive to be accepting of all walks of life, so we try to accommodate as many viewpoints as possible. As noble as this is, some of our community members are putting their intolerant beliefs over the well-being and education of our children. The fact of the matter is, queer people are not inherently bad. We are not a bad influence. Our existence is not pornographic. Our presence is not grooming the vulnerable. We simply want to exist in public in peace. And we want queer children to be able to do the same. Contrast that with the brimstone and fire speeches from some of our well-meaning community members who claim that acceptance of queer people in our schools is grooming children to be queer, as if that's how grooming works and as if being queer is a bad thing. That is intolerance, however well-meaning and misguided it may be. I wish to remind the board that their continuing policy of queer acceptance is the right thing to do, and to commend their strength in not bending to the intolerant beliefs that harm our community's children. Thank you.
Thank you, Rian. Next up is Bob Allen, and after Bob Allen is OG Strogatz.
Hello. Last week, I had a senior in my class refer to something as gay, and I assure you it wasn't in terms of happy or joyous. I called the student out on this. To their credit, they immediately apologized. As a reminder, this is a senior, not a ninth grader, not a middle school student, but someone who arguably knows better than to say such a thing in my room or in front of me. As a 56-year-old man, I was not offended, nor did I feel unsafe. And I'm here to mainly talk about safety for our students. At Cal High last year, we had a lockdown that lasted long enough that some students were urinating into buckets. The year before, we had a lockdown that didn't last as long, but there was a poor HVAC technician on the roof that was unwittingly the cause of panic in some students and parents. When parents talk, one of the things they talk about is the safety of their students. A 2023 Gallup poll shows that 38% of parents fear for their child's safety, one of the highest percentages that did not directly follow a school shooting. And as an aside, I worked with student teachers at Appalachia High School when I was a PhD student. I can tell you right now that every student and every school teacher gets freaked out after any massacre at a school. Which brings me to the incident at San Ramon Valley High School 2 weeks ago. Mike Arata has been attending board meetings for years to denigrate students and teachers in our district. For the longest time, that's all he did. But now he has escalated his actions by strolling onto the campus and taking pictures of students and materials while the students were at school. Rest assured, this is an escalation. Mr. Arata was told many times that he has no right to inspect the schools, and he purposely chose to ignore the directions of school officials. His actions made students, children of this community, unsafe. For the safety of all our students, this cannot be tolerated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. And then last we have OG Strogatz.
Good evening. I'm OG Strogatz with the Danville Alamo Walnut Creek branch of the American Association of University Women, or AAUW. So a number of us from the branch are wearing plaid tonight in honor of Annie, the protagonist of the book entitled Annie's Plaid Shirt. By providing this book to our elementary school students, you have chosen a story built around an inspiring young girl. She is strong, active, bold. She defines herself on her own terms. Annie knows and firmly stands up for what she adores, her red plaid shirt. When her mom insists that she wear a dress to her uncle's wedding, Annie works through her frustration and anger to devise a solution that features the plaid shirt and delights both her and her mom. What a hero Annie is. Carolyn Kaywood of the American Library Association's Rainbow Roundtable states that this book, quote, will serve as a discussion starter about problem solving, social expectations, and individuality. Thank you for including Annie's plaid shirt among our district's book selections. More broadly, we wish to convey our continued deep appreciation to SRVUSD faculty and staff for the professional expertise and care you bring to all curricular decision-making, including the latitude for students and parents to make individual alternative choices as they wish. We're grateful for your work to cultivate public education as a cornerstone of our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, OG. And that's the last of our non-agendized public comments. So next we'll move on to 10.4, which is the association president's report. Is Carrie or Tammy Castelluccio with CSEA president.
Good evening. I'm Tammy Castelluccio, president of CSEA. I would like to congratulate and welcome back Danny Hillman as our new Assistant Superintendent of Business Services. We are excited for Danny to be back in the district, and we're looking forward to working with him again. We negotiated and ratified our health benefits MOU, and we're in full swing of open enrollment. We have our regular check-in with CJ this week, as well as our check-in with HR. We have a few job descriptions that we're continuing conversations on, as well as reclassification conversations from last year. Thanks.
Thank you, Tammy. And then we have Laura Finco with Servia, the Servia president.
I know I usually start off with my land acknowledgement, but I don't have to do that tonight. I want to congratulate our students who are recognized this evening with the American Legion. We do quite a few different recognitions of our kids and what they're doing. And it just shows you just a wealth of opportunity that our kids have here, because it's not just about the sports, it's not just about the academics, but also that civics, that community service, service to others. And then our young people that came in here, I know they were working on, their badges and such, but to be able to come up and sit in front of a group of adults, group of people in authority, it's like, that's pretty darn scary. So, it's like our kids are doing some really, really awesome stuff. And I think that's one of the things that I really wanted to capitalize tonight on in my report to you all, is just really taking a step back and a breath of why is it that all of us are here? Because in all of the things that we are doing, there is one common denominator on everyone that is in that room. And that is, well, hopefully everyone that is in this room. And that's with the understanding that our kids are important to us. Doesn't matter whether you have a kid that is in the schools right now, whether you had a kid that was in our schools previously, or even those that are community members that don't have any children whatsoever. Our students are important to us. And when we stay focused on that one common denominator of why we are all here doing this work, we should be able to break down lots of walls, and we should be able to be building bridges and sharing with one another in our communities about all of the wonders that our kids are doing. Because we sit here and we hear, again, disinformation about all the supposed negatives that are happening, declining test scores and such. When in reality, we know that our staffs are working extremely hard to look at those trends. our Ed Services Department, I have the utmost faith in what our Assistant Superintendent, Christine Huguardo, does with her staff in looking at what are we doing in our classrooms? What are those trends? What's happening? What else can be affecting? Where are there spots that we need to be watching? And as the educators that are here, the people that I have, hold dear to my heart, I know that each and every one of them walk into their classrooms with the best intentions of ensuring that our students get the best. Our students get the best. State funding and federal funding does not allow us to be able to have the financial resources that we need here in this district to give our students the best, to be honest with you. Sacramento and Washington, D.C. are not going to change how they fund public education anytime soon. So we need our community to step up and fill the gap. And for the last 10 years, they've done that with our parcel measures. $144 a year. $144 a year. It's the same $144 that was 10 years ago in 2015. Well, no, not really the same, because $144 10 years ago purchased a lot more, had a lot more purchasing power than the $144 now. But when we're looking at Measure Q, and this is informational only, we're looking at a small portion of value of parcel being put into our schools that directly impacts our students, because this parcel measure pays for FTE that funds our programs. And when I talk about our programs, I'm talking about our teachers. And I think that when we hear about our financials in our district, that it's very important that our public understands that Measure Q funds teachers. Teachers are the program. So there is no question about it. Measure Q puts teachers in our schools. And without Measure Q, we are going to have to be doing some serious look at what is no longer placed in our schools. And so I am encouraging voters that as you read your ballot, look at the facts about Measure Q and make an informed decision that is best for our students. With that said, I also want to share my congratulations and welcome home to Danny Hillman, and look forward to having him back in our business services and doing the good work that we do here in the SRVUSD. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. All right, so then we'll move on to 10.5, which is our student board member report. Travis Hodges.
Well, first of all, thank you. I think the best thing I could start off with to update everyone on what I've been doing is I had a great opportunity to meet with students from our district through our new office hours program that we set up. I had the opportunity to connect with students from both middle and high schools across the district, and I got some very valuable feedback on our programs, and I also got to address some of the questions students had about how our district operates and what we're currently working on. I'm also currently working on a series of videos to keep our students updated on what's going on in the district, and it will also allow us to highlight different ways that students can get involved and stay engaged in our community. And this is something I'm very excited about. So you can be on the lookout for these probably mid-November. And we're planning on having a couple of short form videos, think like Instagram Reels, that will be easily accessible for students, and then a more long form video, which will be shown at our different school sites. I also got to meet with our student senate, and we had a very productive conversation covering everything from school technology policies, which will be discussed later tonight, as well as some budget priorities for students. It was great to hear their thoughts and see how they align with what we're working on as a board, and I'm excited to share some of their input later tonight. I've also continued to meet with our district committees as well as our superintendent, and have also been directly gathering feedback from some members of the community who have been reaching out, and definitely a lot of students from our school sites. It's been great hearing everyone's input and again, looking forward to bringing these ideas to the board and working collaboratively to find some solutions.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Travis? Okay. Yes, thank you. All right, so next we have 10.6, which is our superintendent's report. Superintendent Kamick.
Thank you so much. I really enjoy it when Travis and I are talking about some of the same things because I think that shows a focus on the importance of student voice. And I really want to express my gratitude to the Student Senate. Had a wonderful opportunity to meet with them on Monday afternoon. And if you ever have a question about our future, hang out with our students because it will reaffirm for you that we are in great hands. And it reaffirms the great work that our staff is doing throughout our schools and the great work that our students are engaged in. They're so thoughtful and so insightful about how they want to address the changes they not only want to see in the world, but within our district as a whole. So it is always motivating. I really appreciate the opportunity to be there with our students. In another sense, I was at the Cal versus San Ramon Valley football game on Friday night. And that was an amazing game. So proud of our student athletes and the community in general from both schools. So wonderful competition, a whole lot of energy in the stadium, and congratulate all the student athletes on a great game. I want to thank our San Ramon Valley Education Foundation for an amazing run for education. It was quite a turnout on Sunday. So many of our community members were there, so many students, so many staff, so many mascots. Thank you to our mascots for hanging in there for the duration of the morning. Thank you to the City of San Ramon and Chevron for their partnership and sponsorship, and to all of the volunteers that made that event so successful. I was inspired by all of the runners. That does not mean I'm going to start running tomorrow, but they were pretty amazing. I also want to thank the school sites that have opened their doors for me. As you may know, I try and get out to visit sites as much as I can. Since our last meeting, I think I've been to Country Club, Pine Valley, Walt Disney, Alamo, Los Cerros, Monte Vista, Tasajara, Creekside, Diablo Vista, Bella Vista, Quail Run, Hidden Hills, Doherty Valley High School, Venture, and Del Amigo. And I want to compliment and agree with some of what Laura, our Servia president, was describing. When I'm going into those classrooms, I'm seeing all the things that I would want to see as an instructional leader for our students. I'm seeing critical thinking. I'm seeing our students collaborate. I'm seeing deep levels of learning and engagement. I'm seeing high school kids do things I never would have dreamed of doing when I was in high school. And I see our staff, both classified and certificated, working really hard with a very clear focus on what's best for our students. So I just want to extend my gratitude for our staff across the district for the work that they're doing. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, CJ. All right, so next we're going to move to action items and public hearings. So consider 11.1, consideration of approval of revision to the Board of Education meeting calendar for 24-25, and that's Superintendent Kamick again.
Thank you so much. So this is before the board this evening in consideration of adding an additional meeting in December. We had previously talked about adding additional meetings that we may need in terms of budget conversations, but in a related matter, we have to make sure that after the election, we hold the meeting to do the annual reorganization of the board within a specific time window set forward between education code and government code. So to accomplish both of those objectives, staff is proposing to the board that we add December 19th as our annual organization meeting for the board.
Does anyone have any questions?
Move that we approve the amended meeting calendar.
I'll
Add
second.
a note to that too, though, that was an already scheduled budget workshop, so it's not really adding a meeting, it's adding a formal component to a meeting, right?
Thank you.
The motion was made by Board Member Van Zee and seconded by Board Member Clark. Roll call vote. Student Board Member Hodges.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Van Zee.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Great. Thank you, CJ. Next up is 11.2, consideration of adoption of resolution number 48 slash 2425 in support of California Proposition 2, Public Education Facilities Bond Measure. And Rachel, I believe you're.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I requested that we actually put this on our agenda to take action. If you've looked at your ballot already, or at least, reviewed what's ahead of you to vote, Proposition 2 was placed on the ballot by the legislature. There was a period of time where there were two competing bonds, both the same well-intentioned, but this is the one that moved forward. It's much needed because it's been a while since we've had a state bond. The last one narrowly failed. And so if you think about how this is already pretty long, and so there's a backlog of requests. My understanding, because I've heard questions about it, is that does the old queue remain? And it does. But this particular bond would fund $10 billion, and they don't all get funded at once. It has to do with how the state sells their bonds, just similarly to how we go sell bonds when we pass a local bond measure. But it'll be for $10 billion for TK through 12 schools, as well as community colleges, so also sometimes referred to as TK through 14. Of that 10 billion, 3.3 is allocated for new construction. 4 billion is for modernization, and that is for schools that are 20 or buildings that are 25 or more years old. 600 million for career technical education facilities. 600, did I say 600 million? That's what I meant to say, 600 million for charter schools, which usually aren't included in the mix, but they have needs as well. So that totals 8.5 for the K-12 or TK-12 realm, and then the additional 1.5 billion for community colleges. So while we don't have a new bond right now, we talked about at a recent board meeting that we will eventually need to go out for one. Having a bond locally allows you to apply for this state funding because it's matching. There's been criticism of this bond that it preferences wealthier places, and there's actually been rebuttal arguments that that's not the case. This bond actually carves out money for hardship districts, and that is defined by communities where the property value is low, and so they have a hard time passing a bond that's big enough to do anything because you're limited by how much you can financially put out there for your community. And, there's ratios there. And so if you're in parts like maybe in the eastern part of California out in the desert, they would have a hard time, passing a big enough bond to do something. So there's carve outs in this for that. And also for communities that just have had a really hard time passing a bond because in certain parts of the state, it's harder than others. So it's a good package in terms of something in it for everyone. Because when you take I also heard at a CSBA lunchtime talk on Prop 2 is that there were some people looking at it as, well, why should I support this? What's in it for my district? And then there was the encouragement to think about the public good and that we're in this for public education for all kids in California. But given our district situation, I believe we have projects in the queue waiting to be funded. And so it behooves us to pass this, and we will have future ones as well. So I urge us to pass this resolution in support of Prop 2. It largely is a ceremonial thing, but it says something to our community that this measure is important. And even though some people may have already voted, not everyone has. And so it's a statement of support for this measure.
Does anyone have any questions?
And I just think something, and Rachel, you could probably even talk to this deeper too, is something that's included in this resolution is how Proposition 2 does not increase state taxes in the public as well too. Is that?
And that's a fine point. It doesn't raise taxes. It doesn't put a line item on our property tax bill. It gets funded through the state. And so it, becomes a challenge on the general fund, to be honest.
Yeah.
But we need to confront in California that while Prop 13 helped a lot of property owners, it also really hurt schools. And it hurt the school funding that Laura eloquently talked about earlier. But nowhere is there any place in these budgets to fund the facilities of schools except through bond measures. And it's set up so the state helps, but the local community has to put most of the money forward for it. So you don't go into a local bond measure with the promise that we're going to get this much from the state, because it's never guaranteed, because it depends on who else is in the queue. But it puts you in good standing to at least be eligible for some help for the state, and it allows us to make our bond money go further.
Which we've been able to do historically very well.
Right. So I'll make Shelley, did you want to make a motion, or did you have a question?
I will make a motion to adopt the resolution number 48/2425 in support of Prop 2.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Clark and seconded by Board Member Ordway. Roll call vote. Student Board Member Hodges.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Van Zee.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next up is 11.3, which is the naming of the facility music room of San Ramon Valley High School. And that will be our Vice President Shirley Clark presenting, and I need to first gavel into a public hearing. And then I don't know if you want to introduce it, and then.
Well, it's a great, great pleasure for me to introduce this to the board this evening. We have many outstanding educators in our district, past and present, but some leave an indelible and lasting mark on the students they touch. One of those incredible educators is Ken Abrams. Ken spent 36 years at San Ramon Valley High School creating the most award-winning choirs in the state of California. A talented musician himself, Ken could have done many other things with his talent, but he chose to stay at San Ramon High School, where he taught his students so much more than instilling in them a love of music and singing. He impressed upon them the value of hard work and dedication. When he retired in 2021, he left a lasting legacy, a legacy that is alive and well today in the students he taught, who you will hear from in a moment. When I say his choirs were award-winning, the San Ramon Valley High School choirs had 14 first-place wins at the Golden State Choral State Competition in the last 18 years prior to his retirement, more than any other choir in the state. And San Ramon High School was the first high school to win double gold, which meant sweeping both the concert choir and chamber division in the same year. At his retirement, they had more wins than any other school in California. Ken himself and his choirs have received so many awards and accolades, the list is endless. As a personal note, my daughter was a student of Ken's, and I just want to read you a little bit about what she said about Ken in a letter she sent in public comment. Ken, or Mr. A, as so many of us lovingly refer to him, has played a pivotal role in my life and the lives of so many students at San Ramon High School, and his positive impact is felt throughout multiple decades and generations. My own post-grad pathway to music as a vocal performance major in college would not have come to pass had I not encountered Mr. A on my first day of women's ensemble freshman year. His encouragement and leadership bolstered my confidence to pursue music and life with commitment and passion. There is no educator who has done more, meant more, or positively shaped my life more than Ken Abrams. Hundreds of former students say the same. There is no commensurate honor that adequately reflects his life's work, but let's rename the choir room in his honor as a start. So with that, I believe we have some public comment.
So, and I first want to mention that we did have 46 electronic public comments submitted for this item supporting the naming of San Juan Valley High School. 12 additional comments, I believe, were submitted before the agenda was posted, so they will not be included in the minutes, unfortunately. So thank you, Shelley. So we will move on to public comment. And first we have David Flashner, and after David will be Tiffany Neron.
Sorry, I got the coughs right before we started. My name is David Flashner, and I'm here today to express my strong support for renaming the San Ramon Valley High School Choir Room in honor of Ken Abrams, who dedicated 36 years of his life to teaching and shaping lives of countless students that entered that choir room. I was lucky to have spent 4 years with him as a student, and then I came back and worked with him for the final 15 years of his teaching career at SRV. During those 15 years, Ken would have me run all the sound and lights for his concerts. Ken wasn't just a teacher, he was a mentor, a leader, and a transformative figure in the lives of countless students for more than 3 decades. His commitment to excellence in music education helped shape the choir program into one that SRV could truly be proud of. Beyond the music, Ken's influence extended to building a sense of community within the classroom. He created a space where students felt seen, heard, and most importantly, safe. A space where they could express themselves and be part of something larger. It wasn't just about perfecting performances, it was about teaching young high school students how to act in the real world. Simple life lessons about being on time and doing the best job possible. Under Ken's leadership, the choir room became a second home for many students, myself included, a place of belonging. Ken's legacy lives on through the lives he touched, and renaming the choir room in his honor would be a fitting tribute to his lasting impact. It would serve as a permanent reminder of the passion and dedication he brought to the students of SRV. Future generations would not only know his name, but also feel inspired by the legacy of care and excellence that he left behind. I'm lucky enough to call Ken Abrams a friend and a mentor, but more importantly, he's probably the most important person in my life after my parents. I credit him with everything in my life. I didn't graduate high school on time. I didn't even graduate college. However, the lessons Ken taught me over the 4 years of choir were better for me than any college degree out there. When I moved back to the Bay Area, working with him over the next 15 years, I got to witness so many things that Ken would do for his students. As the school changed over the years, many things on campus changed. But one thing that didn't was how much students enjoyed the choir room. Many days when I'd have to be on campus, I would often show up just before lunch. That classroom was always full of singers. It was more than just a hangout spot. It was a place where singers continued to make music. Ken's students loved to sing, and it showed every day. I am not a singer at all. I can't hold a tune for the life of me. But Ken inspired me to love music, and now my entire life is shaped around that. In every event that I work on, there is one lesson that I use that he taught me. If you're going to put your name on it, make sure it's worthy of your name. As I would tell current singers, remember that saying, it can take you further in life than you ever know. I am firsthand proof of that. I respectfully urge you to consider the renaming of the choir room after Ken Abrams as a way to honor a man who gave so much to our school and community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, David. Next up is Tiffany Neron, and after Tiffany is Craig Bratton.
My name is Tiffany Neron. My husband David and I have 4 children who have all been educated in kindergarten through 12th grade in the SRVUSD. I have always known and admired Ken Abrams from his participation in our Danville community. Things like the Danville tree lighting ceremony and the holiday community concerts every December were always super impressive. It wasn't, however, until our youngest daughter, Alexandra, a 2021 SRVHS grad, decided that she was all in choir did I get to know Ken Abrams personally. Very quickly, I was involved too. First as a parent volunteer and donor, and then as the president of San Ramon Voices, the parent booster group for all of the choirs. It was nothing short of miraculous, the level of performance and effort that Mr. Abrams was able to get out of these children and the level of effort that he put into them. He absolutely believed in their potential, and he taught these kids to believe in their own abilities. Mr. Abrams is a master musician, and he never handed out false compliments. Earning praise from Mr. Abrams meant the world to these students, and corrections were always followed with, "I know you can do better." There weren't any seat warmers in Mr. Abrams' choir. Each and every student had a necessary and important role. I have seen Mr. Abrams get the most beautiful performance from the shyest student that might not be having the easiest time fitting in. The student then begins to see for themselves a talent and a confidence that they didn't actually know they had. It's life-changing. It's this ability that we wish every teacher could have. The vision to see the potential in a student and the ability to coach it out of them. That can only happen when you know a teacher cares about you. Through choir tours, Mr. Abrams was able to teach about history and culture. As her choir prepared to travel to Hawaii, a trip that got canceled due to COVID, my daughter said that she learned more about Pearl Harbor from Mr. Abrams than she ever did from her history teacher. Mr. Abrams also taught about service and charity and how important it was to do what you could to make a difference in the world. We saw this in action when the students traveled to Texas to help with Hurricane Harvey relief. They tirelessly helped with the physical cleanup, connecting with the locals and sharing a bit of hope and temporary relief with their vocal talents. While it may be unusual to name a classroom after a teacher, it's even more unusual to have a teacher like Mr. Abrams. It seems only appropriate that we show our appreciation and recognition for the decades of service Mr. Abrams has given and continues to give today to our community. We need Mr. Abrams and the entire community to know that we see and honor excellence in the field of music and teaching, and that we feel truly blessed and grateful to have had his leadership as an example in the SRVUSD. I give my strongest recommendation that we name the choir room at San Ramon Valley High School the Ken Abrams Vocal Music Classroom.
Thank you, Tiffany. Next up is Craig Bratton. After Craig is Megan Scott.
Superintendent, members of the board, my name is Craig Brayton, and I grew up in Danville, currently a resident of San Ramon. My brother and I both graduated from San Ramon Valley High School, and my daughter graduated from California High School. I'm here tonight to share with you why I believe renaming the choir room in the honor of Ken Abrams is a worthy endeavor and worthy of your consideration. We all know that working in the field of education can be a tireless endeavor that's frequently challenging and often thankless. What you, the Board of Education, have before you this evening is the opportunity to thank in perpetuity one of the most dedicated, hardworking, talented, and respected teachers, not only here in the San Ramon Valley Unified School District, but throughout the state of California and beyond. Over his 36-year career as a music educator, Ken Abrams has positively impacted the lives of literally thousands of students. As a sophomore in 1984, I was fortunate enough to be one of his first. I sang for Mr. Abrams for 3 years in concert choir, chamber choir, and together we formed the very first jazz vocal group, which then became a extracurricular and advanced choir. As a junior and senior, I sang in several solo competitions for the California Music Educators Association, the Concord Pavilion Associates, and others. Mr. Abrams was always there on his own time to help me rehearse and to perform and accompany my performances. He made it possible for me to win scholarship dollars that assisted me with my college education. As a parent, I was able to watch and listen to my daughter sing for Mr. Abrams' Danville Girls Chorus. I saw my little girl mature and become a very confident performer because of the program that he started and continues to this day. For the last 2.5 years, I've had the pleasure of singing once again for Mr. Abrams as a member of the 100-person strong Black Hawk Chorus and Black Hawk Jazz. There are many of his former students in both groups, and I think that to a person, we feel our lives have been enriched by music and the opportunity to perform. We all have many different paths that have led us back to singing together, but there will always be one common thread, one driving force who in high school shaped our musical lives, and that is Ken Abrams. Naming the choir room on the campus of San Ramon Valley High School would be a tremendous honor to bestow upon Mr. Abrams. And I think it's an honor that's well earned and well deserved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. Next up, Megan Scott, and after Megan is Catherine Helms.
Good evening, school board and superintendent of SRVUSD. My name is Megan Scott. I graduated San Ramon High in 2000 and was in 4 of Mr. Abrams' choirs from 96 to 2000. I'd like to first share that Ken Abrams is the kind of teacher that if you're lucky, you get once in a lifetime. As a new kid, having moved from Bakersfield to Danville just before the start of freshman year, I was completely out of place at San Ramon Valley High. That is until I walked into Mr. Abrams' choir room. It didn't matter whether you were nerdy, popular, an outcast, or the class clown. It didn't matter whether you were a straight A student or just trying not to fail your classes. It didn't matter what clothes you wore. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor. It didn't matter what race you were. It didn't matter whether you were gay or straight. It didn't matter if you were shy or outgoing. It didn't matter whether you went home to a normal household or one that was very dysfunctional. Ken intimidated and terrified us all equally. All joking aside, in that choir room with Ken, you felt like you were in one big family of musicians and friends and you were home. That being said, home in the choir room was not all sunshine and roses. Ken was a perfectionist. He made it clear that you would show up, give it your all every day. He expected you to work hard and feel confident in yourself. And soon, without even realizing it, you expected yourself to work hard and feel confident. Despite how challenging it could be at 15, 16, 17 years old to get up in front of the class and sing, each of us did it. And over time, we got really, really good. Ken taught us music theory and grew our skills as musicians. We learned to sing in different languages. We sang everything from spirituals to the Beatles. Sometimes after ending a particularly beautiful song, we all got quiet and felt chills knowing that what we'd created was a magical, beautiful, very special moment in time. We won choral competitions, and it felt really good to always beat our rivals at Monte Vista. Over our time in Ken's class, we saw the values of hard work, persistence, and confidence carry forward into every area of our lives. As we grew up into adults and eventually graduated and went on to create our lives, what Ken taught us stayed with us. We made the world a better place. Some of his students became teachers and musicians themselves because of how Ken inspired them. Each of us benefited from Ken's teaching. Ken is the most consequential and impactful teacher we've ever had. In my 42 years of life, I cannot think of a person who has inspired me more than Mr. Abrams to work hard, feel confident in myself, and be the absolute best I can be. There's no way to thank him adequately for his decades of hard work, dedication, and love. Naming the SRVHS choir room after Mr. Abrams would be a fantastic and very fitting way to honor the incredible legacy that he's imparted on our community. It would allow future generations of SRVHS students to learn about and feel inspired by the incredible SRVHS teacher that Ken was. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Megan. Next up is Catherine Helms. After Catherine is Jennifer Zink in Pulse Acapella, it says.
To the San Ramon Valley Unified School District Board, it is with much honor and pleasure that I speak before you to request that the San Ramon Valley High School Choir Room be named in honor of Ken Abrams. Ken Abrams is a legend at San Ramon Valley High School and a hero for the continuation of arts in our schools for almost 4 decades. I had the pleasure of singing with Ken from 2nd grade to 12th grade. In fact, I was the very first person to do that. I started with him during his very first year at Danville Girls Chorus, which at the time was called Valley Community Girls Chorus. And when it came to which high school I would go to, there was no question that I would go to San Ramon Valley High School, if not solely for Ken and the choir program. And now I am so lucky to continue singing with the Blackhawk Chorus under Ken's direction since he retired at the high school. But let's go back to Ken's impact in the school district. Not only did Ken teach us music and music-related theory and education, he also developed our character and shaped us as young adults. From teaching us the discipline to practice our craft and perfect our performances, to our attendance, appearance, and professionalism, to having pride in our drive and our excellence, Ken took us under his wing in shaping these life skills. Ken Abrams will forevermore be in my ear with his attendance policy, and any past student of Ken's would be able to finish this phrase: if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. The most memorable parts of my youth involved choir. To this day, you can play any song I sang in high school with Ken, and I still know my exact part, even the harmonies, to this day. It is so ingrained in me. I cannot say that of any other choral group since. I have so many fond memories of choir learning under Ken, winning choral competitions, and creatively fundraising for our program. Ken recently shared with us that the yearly budget for vocal programs for the schools comes out to roughly 25 cents per student per semester. So every year, our senior-most choir would go on runouts where people in the community hired us as small groups to carol during the holidays. He made it work. He didn't let anything stop him from delivering and inspiring excellence through music. He continues to do that now in Danville Girls Chorus and Blackhawk Chorus. This community is lucky to have him in any capacity still, and I strongly urge that we celebrate Ken Abrams by naming the choir room in his honor.
Thank you, Catherine. Next up is Jennifer Zink, and in Pulse Acapella. And then after Jennifer is Tara Faye.
Well, thank you for having us. My name is Jennifer Zink. I'm an alumni of San Ramon Valley High School. I'm a current parent. My children go to Alamo School, and my daughter currently is in the Danville Girls Choir that I purposely suck out from to put her in so that she could experience Ken Abrams as well. So I'm up here with Impulse Acapella. We represent alumni from San Ramon Valley High School spanning from 1996 to 2010. We all, after we graduated, studying under Ken, we all went on to continue education in college and graduate school. And what we want to share with you, oh, and we also want to add that we are also part of the Black Hawk course, which a number of us are missing rehearsal tonight, and he is not happy about it. So we're all going to show up tardy, and that in its own speaks to us coming to represent him tonight, that even he is not happy with us missing his rehearsal. But what we want to share as a professional group in the community is that we all went and extended ourselves to experience education outside of Mr. Abrams and spanning across California into the East Coast. And we never experienced a level of excellence that matched the music education that we received from Ken. I want to pivot just a little bit on what we were originally going to do. And we just wanted to show you what we are kind of still able to do as a response of being educated from Ken. Okay. Join in. You guys know it, ready? I got a crown, a bit of that kingdom, into that good news. I got a crown, a bit of that kingdom, into that good news. I'm gonna lay down this world, gonna shoulder up my cross, gonna take it home to my Jesus, into that good news. Good news, good news, good news. That good Thank you.
Thank you, Impulse Acapella. It's lovely. Next up is Tara Fay, and then Dr. Shires again.
Good evening, board members and superintendent. My name is Tara Fay, and I'm an alumnus of San Ramon Valley High School, class of 2016. And I'm also a music teacher in West Contra Costa Unified School District, our neighboring district to the west. When I found out that there was an agenda item tonight to vote on renaming the SRV choir room in honor of Ken Abrams, I knew I had to speak on it. Ken Abrams was my choir teacher for 4 years in women's ensemble, treble clef, concert choir, chamber singers, and jazz ensemble. And I can confidently say that those 4 years under his mentorship changed and saved my life. As I mentioned, I'm now a music teacher myself. When I was a young, dumb high schooler with no direction in my life, trying to figure out what I was going to do, the only real guiding light in my life was the joy I felt in Ken's choir class. I always found solace in that choir room. And like so many other students, that room became my second home. We ate lunch in there, rehearsed there after school, and even planned out our schedules so we could take multiple choir classes each year. When Ken gave me opportunities to develop my leadership skills in concert choir as an officer, it suddenly clicked. This is what I wanted to do with my life. I decided to follow his footsteps and become a music teacher. And when I told him, Ken immediately jumped in to help me realize that dream. He wrote me letters of recommendation for college, passed on sage wisdom, and cheered me on every step of the way. Now, in some crazy coincidence, I actually teach at the middle school he attended as a child. He even volunteered last year to run a clinic for a choir festival in my district that my students performed at, and he worked with my students beautifully in this wonderful full circle moment. And I'm not the only student to follow in his footsteps. I know many, many others who were inspired by his leadership to study music and/or to become music teachers themselves. It wasn't until I became a music teacher that I realized just how much of himself that Ken Abrams put into that program. The countless unpaid hours, personal sacrifices, expert musicianship, blood, sweat, and tears that go into building a program like that cannot be quantified. In hindsight, I'm floored by how he managed to do it all. He really is the Energizer Bunny. He just keeps going and going and going. Between teaching 5 subjects and 6 ensembles, running after school programs, full concerts and competitions, not to mention tours across the country and the world. Because of him, I got to sing morning mass in the Vatican for the Pope. All of that was only possible due to his tireless planning, advocacy, and dedication to give his students every opportunity possible. I've never told Ken this, but in a very real sense, he saved my life. In high school, I was battling severe depression, and at times I questioned the worth of my existence. But every single day I walked into his choir room, he never failed to make me feel like a valuable person, student, and musician. And the sense of community that he fostered there was the first place I truly felt welcomed and included. I can say with certainty that I would not be here today if it were not for him, his tutelage, his mentorship, and his kindness. If only in name we can pass on some of that powerful legacy to the next generation of students, you would be doing them an incredible service. So I urge you strongly to rename the choir room at SRV in his honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Next up is Pat Wright. Wait, I'm sorry. First, Dr. Shires. I apologize. And then after Dr. Shires is Pat Wright.
Okay, now I'm speaking as a mom. I have 2 children that had been blessed being with Ken Abrams. I met him when my first was 8 years old in the Danville Girls Chorus and happened to be a chaperone at one of his performances. And he called out one child in the chorus because out of their plastered hair with so much hairspray, there was a little bump. And our first encounter is he brought out the Jersey girl in me, and we shared words. And it's interesting, and we know this in psychology, when you start out not liking someone, and then they go on to impress you, and you get to see who they really are, you actually start admiring them. You actually start, and you like them more than you would someone that you just started liking, which is interesting. It's a paradox, but it happens. What I loved about Ken is that he instilled not just music in my kids, but character. He taught them that doing just the average was not okay, that you had to reach for the stars, that you had to be a perfectionist. And he was an extraordinary person. He touched me. I remember sitting at all his performances, and the psychologist in me would come out. I was trying to analyze him, like, wow, where's he get all that passion from? Because he would just be magical. He would immerse his soul and heart into every performance, even up to his 36th year of teaching. He was the same. He was this young, vibrant soul and just totally engaged in his students. So my son actually got to meet him in DC with the Black Hawk Chorus and wanted his girlfriend to meet him. That's how impressed he was. And he even went to the Black Hawk Chorus having their show in DC. And even to this day, I play piano. And when my kids come home, 2 of them were in his choir, and I memorized all the songs. And I also served on the choir board. So we got to have a lot of discussions and just showing how dedicated he was to that program. And I never saw him relax. He was always, like someone said, Energizer Bunny. That's accurate. So I totally support that room being named after him. He's a wonderful human being. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shires. All right, next we have Pat Wright.
I'm speaking as a parent, chaperone, and teacher. To Superintendent Kamick and members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak for Ken. Aside from being a brilliant musician and music teacher, Ken embodies the characteristics, charisma, and panache of an extremely successful used car salesman. For example, when my son Teddy was a fourth grader, he said he wanted to play the clarinet. I signed him up. He took the clarinet to school, but never to practice. Fast forward to ninth grade. When we came home from walkthrough, I received a call from Ken. He explained who he was and said he wanted Teddy to be a part of men's ensemble based on hearsay from a couple of kids from our church. I told him the story of Teddy and band. He laughed and said, let me talk to him. After several phone calls later, Teddy informed me that he was joining men's ensemble. And what a masterful show of salesmanship that was. Teddy, throughout his high school career, benefited from this decision so well. I'm so grateful. My son credits Ken and his choir experiences for lasting friendships, amazing travel, the ability to impress his Army buddies with his singing, and to instill in his unit as a sergeant that, yes, indeed, on time is late. Ken also has the affability and the community building skills of a mayor. He greets everyone with friendly aplomb, and he has built a family of singers in the community of choir, inspiring his students to do their best. It was not an uncommon sight at rehearsals and downtime to see duos sharing headphones, listening to recorded music and singing, perfecting their skills in order to perform better. Ken Abrams, CEO, masterful delegating skills. As a parent, I thought I was signing up for men's ensemble. I would be attending concerts and there would be some kind of involvement. Parent volunteers, workers are expected to chaperone various groups, help with hair and wardrobe, take part in supervising and or joining in with others to set up, take down, and clean up after concerts and rehearsals, and in general, become an integral part of the community immediately. Ken was and still is a driving force, both in schools and in the community. He has touched many students and their parents in such a way that has made many things possible. During his tenure at SRVUSD, choir became a home base for up to 200 plus high school students every year for almost 36 years. With many gears all moving at once, orchestrated by this man, I chaperoned many choir trips beginning in 2013. As a teacher and parent, I've had plenty of experience as a chaperone, and none can compare with the planning, organization, and execution of the trips I was fortunate enough to be a part of. As a choir parent and chaperone, I was able to experience the sheer joy of hearing our students perform beautifully in most of their endeavors, especially in other places, other countries. Parents and students formed permanent bonds on these fantastic tours. I also had the privilege of being a choir mom and chaperone for my daughter in Danville Girls Choir, a superior training ground for future high schools.
Can you wrap up?
Community treasure. My daughter enjoyed her 6 years of singing and traveling. With the many testimonies you have will receive in support of Ken, it seems clear that the choir room should bear his name. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
There's somebody here tonight that I want to acknowledge, and that is Lori Hugel, who spent many, many years as the den mother of the choirs and was a superb accompanist to the choirs and to Ken. Thank you for being here tonight.
So CJ, I don't know if you want to give us some direction on what's the next steps.
I'd love to. Thank you. And thank you to everybody who came out for public comment, to Board Member Clark for bringing this forward. I was talking with a group of administrators this week, and we talked about the reason we go into the profession of education, and it's to positively change the lives of our students. And I think it's an incredible example to hear so many of the stories tonight. And that's, not to take anything away from Mr. Abrams. It certainly sounds like he has gone above and beyond in achieving that goal. But I think it also speaks to the heart of the work that we do in schools. And it's so positive to hear the stories that have come forward tonight. When you think about, as we talked about with this group, when you drop something in the middle of a pond and the ripple effect that takes place, you can't truly measure the impact of what happens with just numbers. but you see the lives that are changed. And this is just a great example of what happens when we have great people serving our students and support from our community. So thank you for sharing it. In terms of next steps, I try to communicate with everybody who shared public comment to try and manage expectations appropriately. But what we have within our existing board policy for naming of facilities is language that says the board encourages community participation in the process of selecting names. A citizen advisory committee shall be appointed to review name suggestions and submit recommendations for the board's consideration. So it would be my advice to the board, and we will serve at the board's pleasure, that we establish a committee. My recommendation is that it include site level staff, certainly could include some alumni and students that are familiar with the content, and a district level representative in terms of facilities. And then that committee would discuss this further and bring back to the board a recommendation. And then we would schedule a public hearing for the board at a later meeting where that recommendation and feedback would be presented to the board. And the board would then at that time hear the feedback, and depending on the board's direction, we could set it up for a decision point at that time, or have another meeting for the decision point after that. So I think the next steps that would be helpful to staff in an effort to serve the board would be to know if the board would like us to move forward with operationalizing and establishing a committee to review this matter and bring back a recommendation to the board.
Does anyone have any questions about that, or what would the timing, oh, I'm sorry, you go. I'm just curious what the timing looks like with that.
Well, I haven't had this come up in my first 10 weeks in San Ramon. I have had it come up in a few other districts, and the timing can generally be relatively quick. It's really just the establishment of the committee and then making sure that committee has appropriate time for a discussion. I think we could work on establishing the committee in conjunction with our district representative, with the site administrator, and some members of the community who may be interested that we've heard from today. And I don't want to preclude any discussion there, but it sounds like there may be a lot of agreement from individuals on this matter and the recommendation. So the committee meetings may be few, and then we can bring it back to the board. So I would anticipate maybe December, January, we're back with the community feedback. And that's not to say the committee couldn't do it sooner, but we do have a number of things lined up for our November and December meetings already.
I do think it's important, and I really appreciate all of the incredible, heartfelt, personal stories. I mean, that was so moving. It's so rare when we have an evening filled with public comment on a particular issue, and it's also incredibly positive and uplifting. But given that our schools are places where current students are every day, I think it's important that such a committee would represent a cross-section of the community at San Ramon Valley High School. And therefore, I think a little more time to invite folks to put their name in the hat or say they're interested in being on the committee is important, because clearly there are huge proponents for this. And if we were to put you all on a committee, it's like, why would you even need to meet, right? But there is, as Superintendent Kamick talked about, there's the current administration, but I think there's also the current students to hear from and the current staff. Because while clearly a deserving honor, I think we need to think about what is the impact to the current folks on that campus, what it means to teachers when you single one out, those kind of things. And I don't mean to be kiboshing it at all. I just think it needs to be thoroughly vetted. And so I don't think we need to rush it. I think it needs to be done thoroughly, partly because it's the first time we've ever done this. We've named facilities after people in memorial. But this is, I think, the first time it would be done in the present, which frankly is more meaningful because the person's there to appreciate the honor. So I'm not saying that that's a negative. I just think maybe going a little bit slow makes sense.
Yeah, and I would offer agreement with that feedback, because I think that there is a lot to consider. I mean, certainly we've heard a lot this evening, which is inspiring and confirming of the work that Mr. Abrams has done. But I do think there is a lot to consider. And we want to make sure that all of those voices, all of those considerations and perspectives are shared. And I would want to bring something back to the board that includes that broad range of feedback from current students, from past students, from the current administration and the staff. Because we know that we have many individuals who are making a tremendous impact. And it is, as you said, wonderful to hear those stories tonight. But I think that we want to make sure that the committee has time for a deep discussion on it.
Yeah, no, my comment was, I agree. We should quickly, I would suggest, going forward with, establishing a committee. But I mean, all these stories from everyone, I mean, I think if, from my point of view, that, Mr. Abrams actually had been doing like a lot of work that we are now doing with our strategic direction. And he was actually building all the right learner profiles on his students. So yeah, no, I hope I have the, privilege of meeting him myself, but yes, I would love to. So can we move
Does anyone else have anything? Travis, did you want to?
Maybe we could have like the committee also, one of the priorities be kind of outline or come up with some guidelines for the future for how we decide, if we're going to be naming things either in memoriam or kind of present tense. I think that would kind of solve things for the future. Additionally, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I mean, I really enjoyed the stand-up performance we got, and I agree. It's very important that we recognize some of the incredible educators who really help make education feel magical sometimes, right? And leave a lasting impact. Certainly, Mr. Abrams is deserving of this, and I think that we should set up a process to decide how we want to recognize teachers in the future so they can be more lasting.
I think even perhaps something that would be interesting to come from the committee is the why, what is going to be in place that talks about why this was renamed, so that students 10 years from now, teachers 10 years from now will understand that full impact. And I think it would be interesting, like whether that's a plaque or something that goes on the music department room that describes that too, just so that persists on and on. Might be interesting to see what the committee comes up with for an idea like that.
I think the idea of a committee is a good idea. I am awfully biased, so I would have to, leave it to the committee to decide. I can just say that I would never have brought this to the board for consideration if this wasn't the most extraordinary, outstanding, incredible person, teacher, educator. And I hope that we can find our way through some of the ins and outs. I agree with Rachel that we need to talk to the present community at San Ramon Valley High School. But I think the example that he has set and the things that he accomplished and the many, many lives, including my own child, that he has greatly influenced is above and beyond anything that I have seen. And I know we have incredible educators, but I think in this case that he's very deserving. My daughter had never sung before when she entered his women's ensemble, and she graduated with double scholarships from the Berklee College of Music in Boston. And most of that had to do, she had the talent, but he found it and he developed it. And so that's why a part of the reason why I'm so biased and why I brought this here tonight.
Thank you. Right. So do we don't need to take action, just direction?
There doesn't need to be a formal motion. It sounds to me like there is consensus from the board as a whole to move forward following our board policy that says we shall establish a committee. So staff will work on establishing that committee. Sounds like we've gotten feedback from the board. If there's agreement that some of the outcomes from the committee would be feedback for us on process and the how, and also statements and clarity around the impact and the why of what we're doing with this. And it sounds like there's agreement that we would like to see current students, some past students, current staff, administration, and a group that can encompass the students served directly by Mr. Abrams and students and staff there now as well.
Yeah, and parents as well.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
Mr. Kamick, if you don't mind, I have maybe some guiding questions we could have for the committee. Like how we will be referring to these renamed rooms, our classrooms and buildings in question 2. And exactly like, I guess what can be renamed, right? Are we just going to be restricting it to different room types? And then also like kind of as you were talking about, Mr. Van Zee, what does it really mean? Like, are we getting a plaque? Is it a new sign outside of the room? How are we referring to them? I think those would be some great questions that we could have answers from the committee. But overall, I'm very excited about moving forward and again, recognizing our outstanding staff.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. All right, so moving on, we'll move to 11.4, consideration of adoption of resolution number 45/2425, course-based independent study, and that's our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, Christine Huardo.
Yes, thank you. Annually, we bring forward our independent study venture courses to be certified by the board to show that they are the same rigor, they meet the same standards and the educational quality as to be equivalent to what's in our in-person instruction. So tonight we have those courses attached here in addition to the resolution for your approval.
The only question I had is it just looked like maybe oh no, that's on a different thing. Never mind. No question on this one.
Does anyone else have any thoughts, or do we want to make a motion?
I'll move the motion to, sorry, I'm lost the one. Move the motion, to adopt the resolution 45/2425 course-based independent study.
I'll second.
Oh, go ahead. Here's Jesse.
One of us will second
Go
that.
ahead, Jesse.
I'll second that.
The motion was made by Board Member Ordway and seconded by Board Member Van Zee. Roll call vote. Student Board Member Hodges.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Van Zee.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
All right, great. Thank you. So next up is 11.5, consideration of approval of employment contract for Assistant Superintendent Business Services. And that will be Superintendent Kamick.
Thank you so much. So as was shared when we came out of closed session, the board took action to appoint Mr. Daniel Hillman as our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services in a return to San Ramon Valley Unified School District. As a member of Executive Cabinet, myself and the members of the Executive Cabinet are employed on direct contracts with the board. And we are required under the law to approve that contract in a public meeting. And in this case, we have to share out and disclose the term of the contract, which is November 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2026. And we also need to share out the compensation provided in salary for the employee. And I want to share out that compensation will be at step 4 of the existing Assistant Superintendent CBO salary schedule based on years of service. And that would be $296,107 annually. And with that, I would love to hear a motion from the board.
Well, and I think it's important too, since we spent so much time as a board to renegotiate Me Too clauses, positive work year. This contract reflects what all the new contracts look like with the district cabinet team and superintendent, assistant superintendent. So I want to put that out there because this still does fall in line with that, as well as the salary is also at step 4 compared to the outgoing, which was at step 5. So it is lower.
And I just want to say that I am so happy to see Danny back in SRVUSD. He is a great asset to us and he knows our district and he will be able to hit the ground running. And he probably will need to after tonight, but welcome back, Danny.
And I'd like to second Jesse's motion if nobody has seconded
Yeah.
yet.
Oh,
The motion was made by Board Member Van Zee and seconded by Board Member Hurd. Roll call vote. Student Board Member Hodges.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Van Zee.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Great, thank you. And I wanted to, wanted to add the welcome to Danny. We appreciate you coming back, and also just mention that in this quick and seamless appointment, we're saving some money in terms and time in terms of recruitment, and we really appreciate the opportunity to have Danny come back. So thank you. All right, so next we have 11.6, which was moved from the consent agenda. It had been 13.12, and that's consideration of adoption of resolution number 46, 24-25, approving routine budget revisions. And I know, Jesse, you had pulled that. Did you have a question or comments?
My mic's not on. Let me jump down to that. It's towards the end of the packet. So just kind of, and I don't know if Evan wants to come up. Just, I wanted to, as we're in this time where we're looking at budget cuts, we're facing these, Superintendent Kamick has organized the Budget Advisory Committee. It consists of, I don't know what the final tally is, but it's got to be 30 or 40 community members. Shelley Clark's on it with me as well too. And we're doing a lot of work. I just think it's super important to over communicate all our budgetary matters. Sorry, I'm still scrolling. It's towards the bottom here. Almost there. Okay, here we are. All right, so this is on page 184 of the packet, and I'm just primarily going to go through the page 184 just so we can highlight to the public all of these different kind of bullet points that you put in here. So going through on general fund revenues, just let's point out some of the increases that we had. And Evan, do you want me to prompt you with asking you these questions, or do you just want to like pop through them really quick? What works best for you?
I'm happy to go through them, and then if you have follow-up questions.
All right, awesome.
Sorry, fighting a cold here. So on LCFF and other state, the primary, the big increase there is actually two things. There's a carryover of a CalShape grant from last year that we didn't spend, and so there's revenue from last year, and then a new CalShape grant for plumbing fixtures that was just awarded in the last month, and so that's what the $6.2 million is there. CalShape is a program at the state level to improve both ventilation and plumbing in schools. On the federal revenues, $220,000 due to the Elementary and Secondary Schools Act. That's the federal programs, Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV. So those are dollars that we did not spend. We were awarded last year, but did not spend. And the federal guidelines on those for the accounting is you recognize the revenue in the year that you spend it. And then on the other local revenues, 1.6 million increased site donations of 900,000 approximately. That is site ed funds, athletic boosters, PTAs, donations of that sort. And then the unrestricted revenue is both a slight increase in facility use revenue. And then the other piece is an accounting, an accounting issue where at the end of the year, we do a fair market value adjustment to the cash that we have at the county treasury. That's an entry that occurs on 6/30. And then on 7/1, we basically reverse that entry because we count the cash at the county treasury at its actual face value, not fair market value. And so that $711,000 is a combination of both additional facility use revenue and then an accounting entry.
And most of those are all pretty pro forma accounting things. Okay, correct. Excellent. And then on the expenditures, could you walk us through that unless anybody had questions on revenue? Okay, all right.
Great. On expenditures, the first thing there, increase of approximately 3.9 million due to adjustments based on prior year expenditures for vacancies, substitutes, and stipends. So that is part of one of the budget item that we will get to later this evening. But as a review of unaudited actuals, we realized that we were under budgeted for certain salaries and expenditures, or certain salaries. And to make sure that we are properly budgeted in the current year, we increased the budgets for those certificated salaries. And then classified salaries and benefits decreased approximately 4.6 million due to unfilled classified positions. So primarily special education paraeducator positions that are unfilled and will need to be filled by contractors. So we reduce the amount in the classified salaries and benefits, and then we'll see an offsetting increase in our contractor expenses. On supplies and services, an 18.6 million increase. 7.8 of that is due to carryover from the prior year. So again, these are mostly site donations in those, Ed Fund booster PTA groups that were not spent in the prior year. And so after we close the books, we pull all those expenditures over into the new year and budget them just in supplies or services. 6.5 million due to special education consultants. So that's what I talked about a little bit in the prior with the salaries and benefits, and $900,000 in maintenance increases. Did look that up today. The almost that entire amount is due to a tennis court resurfacing project at Monte Vista and San Ramon Valley High Schools. And then 1.1. Oh, so the CalShape expenditures, we got the revenue in. We haven't awarded the contracts yet for buying all those plumbing fixtures or paying for all the ventilation work that will be done. So we have only budgeted so far about 1.1 million in expenditures.
So really quick, Evan, just to pause you for 1 second. So under the salaries and benefit line where it says the decrease in 4.6, is that largely offset by the 6.5 due to special education contractors?
It is, yeah, more
which,
than offset.
which kind of highlights the drive that I know the entire HR team and everybody's working really hard to get those positions filled. But yeah.
Yes.
All right. Sorry.
No, of course. And then in the capital outlay, the primary driver behind that $645,000 increase is for a garbage truck. This was a garbage truck that was originally ordered 2 years ago. It is due to state requirements that you make sure that your big vehicles don't pollute as much. So they require you to upgrade them every, I'm not sure what the timeline is, but they require you to upgrade them. We ordered this vehicle over 2 years ago and it just arrived this last month. So it was carryover of that expenditure and that PO that has been renewed every year. I think it's important to note that after this was published, we reduced the expenditure amount there. So in the next month's report, you'll see the expenditure amount is reduced by I think about $158,000. We had both budgeted to purchase a truck and then also budgeted to retrofit an existing truck, and the retrofit has now come off. They've decided that we no longer need to do that.
Excellent. And that's one of the line items too, that as we're getting really granular on line item level on our budget, is for the public to know that we didn't decide as we're going into a budget cut year to buy $645,000 garbage truck, and that this is a mandate from the state and it was purchased 2 years ago. I just think it's really important to daylight that stuff as we're starting to get very granular. So anyways, Evan, thank you so much. Sorry to make you come up while you're battling a cold, but I really appreciate you walking through that for everybody.
And I think we need to have a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve resolution 46 slash 2445 approving routine budget revisions.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Van Zee and seconded by Board Member Hurd. Roll call vote. Student Board Member Hodges.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Van Zee.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Right, great. All right, so next we move on to informational items. We have 12.1, which is Phone Free Schools Act discussion, and that's with Assistant Superintendent Christine Huardo and Director of Technology Kelly Hilton.
Thank you. Good evening, trustees, superintendent, and extended cabinet members. My name is Christine Mojardo, and I am the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. And here with me this evening is Kelly Hilton, Director of Technology. And we are excited to share some information for you regarding the Phone Free Schools Act, otherwise known as AB 3216. So this evening, we wanted to kind of just take you through a high-level view of the new law, AB 3216, talk a little bit about some of the requirements and exceptions that the law has asked of us, share a little bit about some of our current practices surrounding cell phones within the school environment, talk a little bit about our community input and plans to engage our community around development of this policy, and potential next steps. So to give you a little high level overview and to just share a few key points regarding the new law, it was signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom on September 23rd, 2024, with the objective really being to limit the smartphone use in schools to foster a more focused learning environment. It applies to all school districts, charter schools, and county offices of education, and it amends Education Code 48901.1. Excuse me, 1.7.
Thank you. So why is this legislation becoming a hot topic at this moment? AB 3216 was created to really help us analyze our focus of our classroom and school environments and the impact of this technology, the portable and mobile technology that students have in their pockets and in their backpacks. So some of the research is showing that there's some distraction with cell phones during class time or within passing periods. Studies show that some students, particularly low achieving students, have a hard time with the balance and staying focused when a smartphone is readily available. Another reason the law came into discussion is for mental health, balancing time on tech and off tech, and the impacts of social media access and the conversation around digital platforms during the school day, and just the feeling of creating a safe space for learning without those distractions. The third conversation or impact of the reason this is something we're looking at is for digital safety. Limiting smartphone use will allow our students to potentially be at school without the access to their phones, which are it reduces exposure to things that are not school content. And then finally, looking at enhanced engagement. There's conversations around how to engage our students more and make sure that they have enhanced engagement through the use of the school day from their cell phones. So the requirements of this law require that we really look at developing a policy. The law asks that we develop a policy by July 1st, 2026. We need to really have a conversation about how to do that, because it's really about a conversation. There's a lot of different strategies that districts Bay Area wide and beyond are looking at, but we need to design our policy for our community with significant input from parents, teachers, staff, students, and administration. So that's what we wanted to bring as an update tonight. And then once the requirements or policy are in place, the law asks that we really reevaluate this policy every 5 years to hold us accountable to being flexible to the needs of emerging technology and student wellness and the needs of our community. So with the law, there are some exceptions so that as we would have these conversations, these exceptions would be included in designing the policy. And this is what AB 3216 says. It says that we can go ahead and in case of emergencies and in a response to a perceived threat or danger, when a teacher or administrator of the school, district, or county grants permission, then they can have access to their phones. When a licensed physician or surgeon determines that the possession of the smartphone is necessary, then that is an exception to the policy. And then when the possession or use of the smartphone is required in a pupil's IEP plan. So currently, we have some practices that are in place already in our schools, which you've probably observed in your observations. Our elementary practice in general focuses on personal electronic devices, which I think is a great way to phrase this because it's encompassing emerging technologies that are mobile. And so it means that all of the students have their phones stored in their backpacks, and then smartwatches are set to watch only function during the school day. And then for our secondary students right now in San Ramon, the current practice is that cell phones or other devices are only allowed to be used for instructional purpose and or under the direct supervision of the classroom teacher. So what we'd like to do is come up with an implementation plan for this community input. And we'd like to start with conducting a survey that would be surveying students, school staff, parents, and administrators, and then take the content of the survey and have some conversations with some focus groups, work to develop, a draft of the policy and work with bringing that policy and the survey perspectives to this community for next steps. We'd really like to try to encompass all of this by the end of this school year so that it might be in effect by next school year. But what we're here tonight is to get some input from you all regarding this information and where we can go next with this plan. And there's the timeline of everything to hopefully bring an adopted final board policy to you all by the end of the school year in June. And then we would be able to implement in the fall. So thank you. Are there any questions?
I have a quick question. Will we be able to incorporate our steering committees in this? Is that okay?
Absolutely. We were thinking after the survey that we would go to the steering committees and get their input on.
And student senate.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, when we had some parents that came to previous board meetings to talk about this and just the overall general problem, to me, it just seemed like a slam dunk. Of course, we should do something like this. I chatted with my kids, and in their mind, they're like, I think we already have policies at school. So I think that's a good thing, is there's already some sort of policies within the classroom that a lot of kids know about, but I think this will like overall crystallize it. The surprising thing that I found was like passing it by a few parents who I thought would be a slam dunk, and some of the, oh, I don't know really how I feel about that. So I think part of our strategy between June and August needs to be so much communication on what it is, why we're doing it, what it really is all about, as well as some of those other like immediate pushbacks, like before you even get that word out, it's like, well, what about an emergency? And just over communicating to that it's like not like these are going in a locker in the front office and then the kid can pick it up at the end of the day. I think all of those sort of things will be critical to making sure that it goes off, as well as possible. But I think this is a really good thing that we're looking at. I probably need to adopt something like this in my house too, but yeah, no, thank you for doing the work on it.
So I brought this up before the legislature actually brought this to the fore and decided that all schools needed to do something. So I think it's really necessary because for me, I understand that there's some pushback and I'm anxious to hear all of our stakeholders. But from what all the studies say and all of the information that's out there now that we didn't have before, because some time's gone by where our students have had these phones and social media, there's damage being done. And I can't sit here as a board member and say that I'm going to let this go when I see that there's damage being done to our students. I think whatever we choose after we get all the information from our stakeholders is we need to be consistent, because even though we do have policies in place right now, they are not consistently enforced in all of our schools. And I think that sends a real mixed message to our students. So one class, they can have their phone, the other class, they put it in a pocket, the other class, there's something different going on. So I understand there's exceptions to those things when they use them for instruction and all of that, but I think that it's really a good thing for us to really seriously look at this and also look at what the consequences are to our students if we don't do something like this. And I'm glad that the legislature and the governor had the wisdom to know that all the schools in California need to pay attention to this. There are several other school districts who have been doing this for a long time. Some of them use the yonder pouches. San Lorenzo High School, San Mateo High School, Olympic High School, Ignacio Valley High School, Mount Diablo High School, Santa Barbara Unified, and of course, LA Unified, the biggest school district in California. So I would like to know or see, especially from some of these schools that have been doing this for a long time, how they've implemented what they're actually doing. Is it a full ban? Is it the yonder pouches? Is it you just put it in a pouch when you come into the classroom? Because if they've been doing it for that long and it's working, it would be good to find out how that rolled out and how they're doing it. So, thank you.
Another thing that might be interesting to hear from the committees too, and even from IT, is some like tangential programs. So I think some of the other parents brought up, I forget where I heard it, but it like programs that middle schools have of like wait until 8 to encourage the parents, like, hey, wait until 8th grade to get them like a smartphone, because there's a certain tipping point. Whereas if the majority of your class has it, the pressure for you not having it does become a social thing. But if we can start educating, some of the families that haven't even gotten there yet, so that maybe if we look 3-5 years out where we really are getting some of these things, and supplying the parents with some of these resources as well, even tip guides of like, hey, here's why we're doing this. Like, a lot of our kids are dopamine addicted from all of the apps, and I'm sure parents could say that they're dopamine addicted from all of these apps as well too. So, but I think it has a big impact on kids. So in addition to what we're doing here, I think supporting our parents and our families by saying like, hey, here's some other resources you can use, as well as you're instructing your kids on how to properly use smart devices and stuff like that. I think that could be beneficial.
I have some comments, but did you want to go first? Because I know you talked about it at Student Senate, so I want you to be able to kind of inform some of our thinking based on what you heard from your senators.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to build off what Mr. Van Zee said. I do think it's important to understand that a lot of it goes outside just our phone policy at school. I think we should be talking about education with parents. I also think that when it comes to our secondary practices, we should be breaking it apart by middle and high school. I think that the needs of those age groups are drastically different, and our policies should address it as such. In terms of the conversation I had with the Student Senate and a couple, students from our different school sites, most students feel that there is a need to make sure that our classrooms are places of learning and not distraction. So I do agree that things like, I forget the name of the pouches, but where your yonder pouches, where they're isolated in learning environments, I think that that's important. But universally, all students agreed that a complete ban on campus would probably do more harm than good, was kind of the general consensus I was getting, since a lot of people use them for social reasons. They call people to ask where people are sitting for lunch. You can understand all the different applications. It's important to recognize that these are tools, but sometimes they can be misused. So I think that taking a look at this policy and engaging both students and our community on it is certainly a great step in the right direction. But I think my best piece of advice here would be to try to engage people from different age groups, different school sites, and most importantly, people from different backgrounds. People struggle with the use of this technology differently. And I think if we can get as many different viewpoints on this as possible, that would really help us to make a solid, informed decision.
I'm glad you pointed out the difference between the middle and the high school part, because especially when Shelley started talking about harm, I would kind of think that the way the elementary is bell to bell, but the secondary kind of implies you can have it between classes, and I kind of wonder if middle school is where a lot of the negative behavior starts. And maybe in the survey, we could explore some of that. What would we do? What do you think about passing period timeframes? I did think it was interesting when you posed the question to the Student Senate yesterday, is they were referring to the pockets as jail. That's what they called it, from jail. And some of the kids felt very strongly that it was much more positive to keep it in your pocket and keep it in your pocket, and that to be the expectation to learn the self-control. And it was really surprising to hear the kids say that they thought those lessons were important things for them to learn. But they also agreed that the jail thing was a lot easier, and probably a lot easier on teachers who have to enforce keep it in your pocket. So it was just, I think the way you've mapped this out, and I'm really glad the governor backed off a little bit on his original mandate to give districts time to look at this from lots of angles and not have it to be a negative thing, but to let it be a positive thing.
Yeah, and oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I couldn't agree more. And I think I wanted to let you know that I kind of tried this conversation out at our recent technology advisory committee meeting. And we had some teachers in there and some administrators and or classified staff. And we had just a great dialogue around this conversation like we are right now. And then the outcome was having the conversation is a big part of the process. So I appreciate these comments, and then we'll take those back to engage in designing survey and then bring you updates along the way.
Yeah, and I would ask that we don't miss the opportunity in all of this to be able to think about how we're educating our students around use. And so instead of just, to the point of just taking it away and now they're not really learning how to manage their own, interaction with it, especially as the students get older. And so, providing those opportunities too, and that structure.
Yeah. In IT, we like to add a little bit to the strategic directions because we say social, emotional, and digital well-being, which is the reality right now that I think adults, students, and the community are, just having the conversation around that whole well-being for all of us.
Yeah, I'd be also be interested in seeing what, how the other school districts who have different policies, how they're handling it, especially their teacher and staff, because it is, right, the dopamine, so it is kind of addiction. And so, with any type of addiction, I think it's kind of, hard for the individual, right, to control. So be interested to hear how teachers and staff can support that, as well as how we can help students with that control.
Yeah, absolutely. We've looked at a variety of different school districts already, and there's across the board different ways of approaching this. I think we'll bring those to the conversation as we design our own, and we can go from there.
And I just want to share, I have had a few statewide meetings with superintendents from across the state and talked with superintendents from Northern California, Southern California, and some of my colleagues from the Bay Area about their rollout, their lessons learned. And I think the perspectives that our board has shared tonight is really thoughtful and representative of the nuance of this issue. And it was great to hear the student feedback. We talked about this at our management retreat with the student panelists as well, heard from students and got some really diverse perspectives. And that was incredibly valuable. And I think as I hear the board talking, it's reaffirming for me how thoughtful we need to be in this entire approach, and to hear from Travis and describe the different levels of feedback that we should be looking for. One of the things that I think I heard and that we're looking at is, uniformity, and then understanding enforcement as well, right? Because we have staff at our school sites that have their plate just spilling over with so many things. And we want to put something in place that is manageable from every perspective. And I know some students personally that are in a school right now that the cell phones are completely restricted. And I think the balance point of rounding out the education side of it is so critical, because for those students that I know personally, what they have given me as feedback is that after the day ends, it is like mass consumption, right? It's trying to get caught up. But those same students have said that their social interactions are better at school. They're more authentic. They're building better relationships. The superintendents that I've talked to have said it's changed the culture of their school. And I want to compliment our staff and our students because, as you heard me describe in the superintendent's report, I've been to a fair number of sites in the first 10 weeks. And I really have not seen cell phones as a significant distraction in the classroom. So in the learning space, despite various things being in place, I see our students on task and doing a really good job with the support of their staff. And what I see during the non-instructional times varies greatly depending on the age level of students. So that break time or lunchtime at high school looks very different than the Diablo Vista sixth grade lunch where I was at, where there's still a little bit more of a spirit of recess as they knew it at the elementary level. So very nuanced issue. And I just want to compliment the board for the perspectives and thank our staff for bringing this together. I look forward to hearing the feedback and being engaged in the process.
We do have one public comment. So I did want to ask though, I guess before that, will there be a committee or how, either surveys, when we look at the potential next steps, there's survey all groups, there's results and forum, feedback to policy. Will there be a committee or will it just be kind of, I'm just curious about.
I think the idea is to, and Christine and Kelly, please correct me. I'm happy to be mistaken. But I think the idea is to get broad level feedback from surveys and then utilize the existing groups that we have, getting feedback from Student Senate, using our steering committees, gathering feedback from our Council of PTA groups, kind of utilizing our existing resources and groups that are in place. And I think if we do that well, we're going to have a really broad range of perspectives.
Okay.
And I think as Travis shared, we might have to take some particular steps to make sure we're getting really good feedback at different age groups of students. The Student Senate is a great forum, but there may be some smaller conversations that we can gear towards middle school students at each site and bring that feedback forward to you.
Okay, good. All right, so we do have one public comment. It's Kate Dirksen.
Hi, thanks so much for putting this on the agenda. I am really excited to be here. My name is Kate Dirksen. I have 2 kids at Green Valley, and I am super passionate about this topic for a few reasons. One, a teen family member of mine is in the midst of a mental health crisis, largely due to online bullying and really bad social media content. Phones at school were definitely a factor. The second is I'm a technology entrepreneur. And technology is not going anywhere. And I think we have to figure out as a society how to both embrace tech, but how to keep our kids safer and create a cohort of kids that can use tech in moderation, which we do not have right now. So I've been studying this issue deeply for 18 months. I would be happy to share resources or be of service if I can. One really great resource that I recommend you just get on the Substack of is Techno Sapiens. It's Dr. Jacqueline Nessie. It's just all evidence-based, so you can get a good update on all the research there. Obviously, Anxious Generation's a bestseller, and they make a strong case for a phone ban there. I could go on and on. But I think one thing I wanted to highlight is this issue is actually starting in elementary school. A lot of the discord we hear about is like middle school and high school. And that's because that's when you start seeing some of the downstream impacts. But we have spent the last year interviewing over 500 parents and kids and experts. And what we're seeing is that the online addiction and the bullying is starting at the elementary school age, even before they have phones. So if I could overgeneralize, chatting starts in 2nd and 3rd grade, oftentimes between parents and kids, and maybe among small groups of friends. It moves to big group chats by 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. 40% of kids in elementary school are on social media already. So those are typically starting at 11, 12, and they already have access to TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. I'm not even counting YouTube. YouTube really becomes a huge issue in elementary school, and YouTube has become social media because they've introduced shorts and autoplay. So it really is a feed. So just really look at elementary school as the starting spot. There has to be policies there that address this. Middle school and high school, there's tons of research out there on this. I am a huge proponent of a full ban from bell to bell. The pushback is going to be from parents who want to talk to their kids and of course the kids who want to use them. And if there is balance that's needed to be strike, really think about 1 or 2 times during the day. If you put them in the pockets or you keep it on a class by class basis, enforcement is a nightmare. So anyways, I'm excited to see all the survey data. I'm excited that we're moving forward with this and really excited that our school will be taking action on this important issue. Thanks.
Thank you. So this is an informational item, so we don't need to take action. Any further comments or questions, or are we good to move on? And you have everything that you need at this point, CJ, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. So next we'll move to 12.2, which is the 24-25 budget and MYP update. And that's Superintendent Kamick.
Thank you so much. So I'll be going through a brief presentation on an updated fiscal projection for us. And our director, Evan Miller, is also here to help answer questions. Hopefully we'll give his voice a little bit of a break while I go through the presentation. So I'm sure the board and members of our public will recall that in the last board meeting, we shared out that when we closed our books at unaudited actuals, we had some unexpected developments in terms of misprojecting some of our salary costs. And I want to reiterate that where we were negative $7.25 million at close of the books, a lot of people, and I had sent a letter out to our community at large to share this information and to our staff, a lot of people felt like, you know, they kept coming back to me and saying, so is this $7.25 million missing? Can we not find it? Where did it go? And I want to reiterate, that's not the case. That's not what happened. When our staff projected the amount of money that we would expend on salaries, we missed that target. And the result in rough numbers was about $4.5 million in salary that we didn't project accurately. So that money was paid for work that was done to employees who deserve to receive those wages. The remaining amount, the bulk of it, is when we misproject a salary amount, and then when we make that payment for salary, we also have to pay the statutory obligations for employment, such as payroll taxes, PERS and STIRS pension costs. And so that makes up this kind of the remaining significant portion of that 7.25 million. And we talked in the last meeting about corrections that we put in place to resolve that discrepancy of the negative 7.25 million, including sweeping money from a discretionary block grant, transferring money out of some restricted dollars from the general fund to more restricted dollars to free up general fund dollars. And those actions, while I described it in the last meeting as we didn't have a cash problem, we had a budget problem. And so we don't have to go get the $7.25 million. We made budget adjustments to resolve that problem. But those budget adjustments don't happen in isolation. And so as I shared in the last meeting, it changes the timeline and intensity of what we are looking at for future reductions. And so that's what I'm going to be reviewing this evening. So I've already kind of talked about this, but we'll go through our recommended next steps, and we'd be happy to receive and listen to board discussion and direction. So what we did in updating our budget projections is we adjusted our certificated salaries to match our historical trends. We are increasing our contribution for special education, as Evan mentioned in the previous, one of the previous items where we're talking about budget adjustments, where we're seeing an additional $3 million in anticipated costs for non-public school, non-public agency services. Those non-public agency services are the part where we're talking about not being able to fill some of our classified para positions that support special ed, and thus the need to contract those services out. Contracting those services out is always more expensive than hiring our own internal staff. Our goal is to hire our staff for our district, but we also have to provide the services. So when we are unable to hire, we need to contract out, and we will continue to recruit in hopes of hiring. The more that we hire, the more we'll decrease those outside contracts for services. As I mentioned, some of the solutions that we enacted for our unaudited actuals development, how we were funding some of our custodial positions, a sweep of facility dollars that we were contributing from the general fund, and the spend down of a block grant. Those will continue. And based on our updated projections, we are looking at a need this year to reduce by about $3.5 million in the current year. And I want to highlight that all of our fiscal projections that we're talking about tonight, as they have since last spring, include the assumptions in our budget development that we will continue to have revenue from a parcel tax after this year, meaning it assumes the passage of Measure Q, which is the same set of assumptions that were being made in the spring, and those are being carried forward. So in terms of the 3.5 million, our recommended next steps is for our staff to bring forward to you as a board a recommended set of reductions in the November meeting. We want to have time to be thoughtful about those potential reductions. We want to have time to discuss those with our labor partners, receive their feedback. It will not be as comprehensive as the full budget advisory committee process because we don't have that time. Pending the board's approval of those recommendations, when we come back in December, we would enact and reflect those in our first interim budget report, which is our first annual progress report of the year that we make publicly and that we submit to the county. And so that's kind of the timeline that we're looking at for that process. In terms of the out years for 25, 26, our updated fiscal projections, our revenue assumptions remain unchanged. Those may change when we see the governor's January budget proposal, but we will be making some budget decisions really before we get significant comprehensive information on that. Our annual operation cost assumptions include step and column, our CPI for supplies and services, utilities, and as I mentioned in the previous slide, our special education estimates increasing. So when we look at where we land now, due to the increased special education costs and our revised expenditures that we have now accurately projected into our budget based on lessons learned from the unaudited actuals, we believe we need to make an additional 7.5 million in reductions above the 16.5 that we had already targeted. So that sets forward a new target for 25, 26 of $24 million in budget balancing solutions. That does remain an estimate. The best first glance we get at how accurate those estimates are is first interim. So right now, as Evan would probably tell me, we're looking at a short sample of payroll. And when not all, but most of our costs, 86% roughly, are in personnel, we really want to see 2, 3, 4 sets of payroll. So we measure that out a little bit more accurately. We'll know that at first interim. This number could change a little bit by first interim. The other thing that may impact these projections are the results for the Measure Q election. And as I said, we'll be keeping a close eye on what's happening at the state level and any early previews we see in the January governor's budget proposal. Historically, and I don't have scientific data behind this, but my experience as a superintendent is generally what we see in January, what I would describe as the trend holds true in the May revise. If we get really good news in January, we get pretty good news in May. If we get bad news in January, we get bad news in May. So it's not definitive about what the next fiscal year will be, but January does generally start to really set the tone for, are things going to look better at the state level, or are things going to look a little bit more tight? So we'll keep our eye on that very closely as we progress through this. Our recommended next steps is to continue the work of our budget advisory committee. I'll be sending them a communication after this meeting tomorrow morning that outlines the new targets. And I'm really impressed with the work that's happening within that group. And we're at a very pivotal point because we've done a lot of learning together as a group. And now it's time to start brainstorming and getting through some of the tough process of how do we identify where we can reach budget balancing solutions for the district. We want to maintain our timeline for board discussions. Again, we talked about adding the meeting in December for the organization, and I believe board member Hurd pointed out that we'd already set that aside as a budget workshop. So we want to maintain those times with a target decision point of January, because we know if any of the reductions include personnel, we have an obligation to go through a formal process if we have to do a reduction in force, the term defined in the ed code, where we issue those notices by March 15th. Historically, that was just for certificated staff. That law changed a few years back, and it is now the same for classified and certificated staff. We do have plans to continue to get larger community and staff and student input on some of these things outside of the Budget Advisory Committee, and those things are in development at this time. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and our Director, Evan Miller, is also here to answer questions. But as we said we would do in the October meeting, we're coming back in this meeting to reflect to you, the board, and to our community what our revised budget targets are for reductions. And we will bring forward recommendations in the November meeting. And then we always do our first interim in December.
Thank you, CJ. I really appreciate that. I think the only thing that I'll add is the same thing that I said last time, where I really appreciate the clarity, because school budgets are so wacky. Like they're different than outside business. They're different than our home budgets. They're different than anything. And the forms you look at, it's all completely different. But so to the point of this 7.25 didn't just vanish or disappear, but also acknowledging that this is a mistake. We're feeling the impact of this. It's a rough time for that mistake to happen when we're already going into budget cuts. But there has been accountability, and we've addressed that, and trying to be as transparent as possible, as well as trying to help the community understand a hard to understand subject like budgets and how this all moves around. So appreciate all the work that you guys are doing on it, and appreciate your leadership on it, CJ.
So with the increase in special education costs, my understanding is that's kind of a trend, at least in the state, maybe nationally, in terms of just a higher increase, right? Do you see, or has anyone heard any chatter at the state level or the federal level about additional funding specifically for those costs?
So I have in my prior district twice in the last 3 years, we went back to DC on the CSBA AXA Coast to Coast advocacy trip. We met with our local federal representatives, and I don't remember the author of the bill or the name of the bill, so I apologize. But there is a bill in existence that many have signed on for, which in essence brings that federal promise of 40% to fruition.
How many years, how many decades later?
I will say that in our discussions with our federal representatives, I believe both of them, at my time in Fremont, it was Swalwell and Kana had both signed on to that. But there was not a pathway yet to get that bill all the way across the finish line at the federal level. There was not enough agreement from both parties. And so I know there's discussions at the federal level, but it has not gotten enough support to get across the finish line. But I know there are individuals in DC that are supporting the need for this, but we need more help. And when we went for those advocacy trips, it was a pleasure to be there and advocate on behalf of districts in the state, the nation, and our special education students. The challenge is that I was speaking to an audience that agreed with what I was saying. I needed to get in front of an audience who disagreed so I could convince them of a different line of thinking in terms of the appropriate level of funding for special education. At the state level, I haven't heard many new conversations. I do compliment the state. They have increased their, I don't know the percentage, but I feel like they have been contributing more towards special education the last 5 to 8 years than they have historically. They are currently contributing about 40% of our total special education costs. The federal government's around 8.9 to 9%.
Yeah,
So-
for years, the COLA didn't get applied to special education, so it's kind of hard when you pay your salaries to everybody and you're only getting the COLA on some of the costs.
So I just wanted to piggyback on what Jesse was talking about, and that is that our budget is 146 pages. And I am a CFO for a small company, and I can just tell you that the budgeting for public education, the accounting codes that are used, the complexity of it is just mind-boggling, and it's so different than what I deal with in my business. So I think we've had kind of the perfect storm of many things coming together to kind of conspire against us, not taking it personally, but in combination with the increase in special education, which these are our most vulnerable learners and they're most deserving, but it's cutting more and more into our general fund. And with the state waiting to collect taxes until November, and then they didn't really know how much money they were going to have, and they overshot it. And then we have to turn our budget in by May, but we don't know until the end of June what we're going to get. I'm saying this because I think it's important for the public to understand that we're under a completely different system and a way of accounting that is very complex. And that's why we have CBOs who are highly trained and directors who are highly trained in school finance, because it's not like any other company that I've been in. So, and just to be clear again, those funds were used to pay for teachers. So those were in the classroom and they were for the benefit of our students. So it's not like the money was wasted on something that we didn't need or we didn't plan for. 86 to 87% of our budget is people. So now we have to just put our heads down and try to figure out how we can come out of this with our classrooms intact. And that's going to be our mission in the budget committee, and hopefully we can come up with some good things. Thank you for all your work on this. I appreciate it.
I do have one comment or more of a question on this issue. Are projections for the state budget still going to be a deficit this year and pulling from the rainy day fund for, I guess, fiscal year, what would it be, 26 and 27? Or are we starting to pull out and might get more education funding from the state?
I'd say we'll know more in January when the governor actually releases his January budget. And based on what he approved in June and what the state approved in June, they are coming out of this, right? It was a 1-year problem at the state level. I think for districts, what's important to keep in mind is with declining enrollment and low COLAs, it becomes an ongoing problem.
Right. And I do believe that there has been some advocacy to get rid of average, I believe it's average daily attendance. And is there any progress with that anyone knows about, or is that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Travis. We've been talking about that in advocacy circles for a few years now. I'd say, I don't know, a decade. But I would say in the last 2 years, I feel like it's the first time we've gotten some traction for it at the state level. And so in this past season of legislation, they did pass a bill that will not change the funding model, but it's the first time I've seen them take formal action. And it sets forward a mandate for the Legislative Analyst's Office to produce a report with projections about what the implications of changing that would be. And so that's not going to make the change itself, but just having that report generated and provided to the legislature and the governor's office, I think is a positive first step. I will tell you from my conversations at the state level, people continue to say to me, well, some districts would lose money if we did that. And I advise them to think about it a little bit differently, because they're taking the same sized pie and dividing it differently. I would encourage them to think about expanding the size of the pie to accomplish the outcomes that we need.
But to do that, they would have to relook at how they look at Prop 98, which is really the thing that says this is the bucket that goes to education. But it does make you wonder, if you didn't have to spend all this time chasing and measuring ADA, you could just fund your classrooms by the number of kids on the class roll, if that would save some money going into value-added work rather than chasing attendance.
One other thing, and that is that in looking at other school districts around us, Pleasanton, Fremont, Mount Diablo, San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland, Livermore, they all have deficits. This is a statewide problem. This is not just an SRVUSD problem. And I think that says volumes about the way that we're funded, because all of us are in the same boat to varying degrees.
Yeah, and I think Travis, to kind of go back to what you said, some of the things that I monitor, some of the early tax returns look a little bit better, but it's still too early to tell. Anytime we see things that are ahead of schedule, that makes me happy in terms of revenue, but it's too early to tell. But you may hear us talk frequently about the dartboard. So school services is the group that most school districts across the state go to for our financial review and analysis of the state level proposals. And they set forward a dartboard. Their last dartboard came with the enacted state budget, and it projects a 2.93% COLA for this next year, right? The thing that is important to understand for us in terms of COLAs is that is our only ongoing source of new revenue. And that COLA percentage is responsible for many things. It's responsible for increased costs for goods and services, for PG&E, for fuel, for contract services. It's also where we look for how we develop strategies to recruit and retain our employees, which are the infrastructure of how we support our students. And the other piece that we have to look at, which most districts across the state are looking at, is shifting those percentages into actual dollars. So for example, our director or our newly appointed assistant superintendent may have better math than I do for this. But for districts that are in declining enrollment like us, I would estimate that for a 3% COLA, we might still be negative in actual new dollars year over year. Because remember, why you might be getting a 3% COLA, you're funded based on your students. And so if we have declining enrollment, for example, this year, as I was leaving Fremont in the summer, when we projected a 1.07 COLA, that meant we were starting with $7 million less than we started the prior year. And I think it was somewhere similar for San Ramon, $6 million less dollar for dollar than we had last year. So it's a challenge. And I think as we heard from board members, if you were starting a company or starting your family budget, you would never design it the way school districts are budgeted, right? Because you wouldn't design your budget for the month before you knew even remotely what your revenue for the month would be. But as we heard, we are responsible for adopting our budgets in June, which means we're writing them in the end of April and May, and we don't actually know what our state projections will be till the end of June. So it's a wild creation. But I do want to acknowledge and thank the board for one of our early agenda items. I think bringing Assistant Superintendent Hillman back to San Ramon Valley Unified School District will be a benefit because he has served in this role before. And I have every confidence that he is one of the best at the work. It won't make the work easier, but I'm confident we have the right people in this place to navigate the way through this challenge the best way possible.
When I think about the work in front of our budget advisory committee and then that they will bring to us as recommendations, it's a daunting thing to even think about. And I'm wondering if there is a way we can encourage transparent communication about it so we're not in a constant circle. But what about, how about this? If we could, what are the ideas of where the cuts could be made? What discussions take place? What ends up, what stays on a cut list? What gets put on a save list? so that we don't have to keep having those conversations. And I mean, I'm willing to trust the people in the room having those conversations, but I think it would be easier to trust when you know what was looked at and what choices got made. I think that could help with us not getting in this recursive loop.
There's even things too that CJ's brought up in the meeting as well, as like there's certain like mandated things that we have to spend money on too. So when you're looking at the entire budget, it's not like it's all necessarily on the table either. So you're looking at these other things and really trying to get into that. And I think that's somewhat of what the committee is trying to wrap their head around right now. CJ did a really good job actually explaining how school
Yeah, like
funding
do all the
works.
mandatory things
and-
add up to the total and then everything else?
Yeah, no, I mean, like that is really the unfortunate dire situation that we're in right now. And I think that reality is starting to set in. The tone was a little bit more somber last meeting. You feel like that sense of, oh, we're gonna have to land this plane is starting to settle in. So
Yeah, and I think one of the things I shared with the committee that I would share with the board and the public in this regard, and I talked about it with our principals on Monday at our meeting, is districts that are in declining enrollment. And I just read an article from School Services today about what we've lost in student enrollment in the last 6 years, what we're projected to lose in the next 10 years. It's statewide. It's not just San Ramon Valley Unified. But districts that have been going through declining enrollment have gone through budget reduction processes, I would say 2 or 3 times in the past six years. Whether they're massive in scope or minor in scope, I think many districts have made budget reduction decisions in the past 4 to 6 years. And what that creates is a reality where we're trying to take a bite out of an apple that's already been consumed twice. So there is no more low-hanging fruit. There are no more easy solutions. We're taking a bite out of that figurative apple when it's already been chewed down to the core. And so I compliment our budget advisory committee members because they're asking great questions. But for example, they might be asking about, are we duplicating a service in this contract area? Maybe it's technology. And we want to have a very critical eye if we are doing that. But oftentimes the refrain or the response is, we did that in the last few years, right? We found those things in the last few years. And so I shared with our principals on Monday, we can't control every situation that is presented to us. We can only control our response. And so it's going to be difficult. It's going to be painful. And I don't want to mismanage expectations any other way. I know no one's going to invite me anywhere to do motivational speaking around the budget, but I do remain confident that we have the right people in place to find the best solutions possible for us. And I think we have the right structure in place to get broad feedback as well.
If it would be helpful for Jesse or I to give a report or an overview of what we are looking at, the things that the bigger picture, right? I think that might be a good idea to inform the rest of the board if you're interested in that.
And I didn't mean only the board. I kind of meant the community.
yeah.
Well, it would be then in an open.
Right.
So then everyone would be able to hear what, at least, what areas we looked at and some of the things that were suggested or questions that were asked or whatever. I mean, we're kind of in the middle of that. We're getting towards the end of that now. And I think we're kind of like, okay, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
And I think the group is fantastic. The people that are participating in it, because you've got well-respected community leaders, you've got parents, you've got students. Travis is there too. You've got union leaders. It seems like all the parties are there, and I think the intention is that those people will be able to disseminate some of the information out. I just know the communication factor is always so difficult to get it past even some of those like initial barriers, right? So.
Okay, so do you have what you need from us at this point?
Yes, I do.
Except more money?
I do. And I wish I was bringing more positive updates forward, but as we've highlighted, transparency is critical even when it's difficult news.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So next on to administrative matters. So we have our board member reports. Start with Rachel.
So yesterday I had the pleasure of attending Student Senate along with Superintendent Kamick. It was really great. Really nice interchange and really nice to see the senators working on how they work as representatives of the students they represent and trying to set up chain of command for carrying ideas forward. They talked about ideas for bringing student voice to us through public comment and how to work on, how to percolate problems from sites up, but also we talked about how they use existing structures too, not just coming right to the board because we don't really have that power. I attended a deep learning meeting and then an equity steering committee, both meeting in the same week. It's so great to watch how when people are part of those steering committees, they get to learn about all the things happening in the district. Because when they're just at their school site, it's like that elephant where you're touching just that one part and then they get to hear about, oh, we have that here. And oh, that's a good idea. We do that over here. And I think just the eye-opening nature of it, you can see as you walk out of the room with people that they feel empowered because they know so much more and shows we really do have a lot going on. I attended the CSBA Board of Directors meeting last weekend in September, and that was quite full of legislative updates and plans for CSBA really trying to do more in member services, and part of that relates to the conference. I'm glad we'll all be there and get to see the benefits of that. And then a little highlight from last week was getting to do Take Your Grown Up to PE at Quail Run. It's like so great to just be at the school and run around with the kids and see how great their PE teacher is about making it fun, but she's teaching about muscle groups and the kids were great. I know some of the other board members got to go to that too. So that's all.
Excellent. All right. A few similar things. The Deep Learning and Innovation Committee meeting, which was fascinating. We really, our table at least, got really deep on AI and how to properly incorporate that into schools. I had a few students that were sitting there, and it was great because the students actually were disagreeing with each other and how to incorporate it. So I was like, this is fascinating to kind of see even disagreement there and see that flesh out. I'm sure you get to see that firsthand all the time in Student Senate. Had trustee office hours this week, which went well. And I always love doing that and interacting with members from the community that have a variety of topics to talk about. And I always encourage anybody to join mine or anybody else on this board who's doing those. And then I also sit on San Ramon Valley Emergency Preparedness Citizen Core Council Political Action Committee. It's a mouthful, but what this is police, this is fire. It's chaired by Candace Anderson, and this is basically the entire valley being prepared for disaster. So I think in the wake of what's happened over on the eastern seaboard with the hurricanes and things like that, just the nature of a disaster and how quickly you can realize like, oh, where are we short? And the great thing is just the leaders in our community of like, we were talking about not the first initial communication system or the second. We were talking about the third one, just making sure that that's robust in case the first two go down. So that was the topic of our meeting. These are things that you would probably never get exposed to unless you join some of these city government things, and it's comforting to know that there's people out there that are thinking about how to protect everybody else in the case of a disaster. So shout out to them for always, that is their life's work of doing that. So that's great. And then really, I think we've been at 3 budget advisory committee meetings since our last board meeting. That's really been a key focus of mine just because, yeah, it's a real thing, and decisions are gonna have to be made. So yeah, that's it.
So you personally responsible for the great earthquake drill thing?
No. No.
No, okay. So yes, let's see, I think Shelley and I attended our first social emotional well-being committee meeting. That was really neat meeting with the returning members as well as a lot of new members for the committee. So that was great. also attended, right, the Coach Halloween's PE class, but also I got lucky and ran into said hi to Principal Abdul Rahman, and she actually took me into the library because they were having a book fair, and I gotta tell you, she and not her, but like the librarian Cindy Howard, as well as like her team of volunteers, they transformed the library from a library to like a whole Harry Potter experience for the kids and the community. So that to engage community and to encourage love of reading, right? So so that was really cool. Of course, really had a great time at Run for Education, although I didn't run, I walked the 5K. And then last thing is I am looking forward to, I'm an advisor to the president of the California Student Council president, who actually is one, Dylan Reyes, our a student at Monte Vista. And he and his team, I guess his cabinet, have to conduct this or put on this conference for Region 4, all Region 4, I guess, student council members. And that's being held this weekend on the 19th, Saturday, at Monte Vista Workday Center. And I get to be there as advisor and also the adult that has to be, administrator type thing. So, but I'm really looking forward to it. This is like my first time attending. I think you attended one before, right?
Let's go again. They came up with some great ideas and solutions. So Run for Education was great. I limped along 5K with my knee that I had surgery on, and I made it the whole 5K, but I had to walk. I did 2 informational presentations at San Ramon Valley High School for Measure Q, one for the PTA and one for academic boosters. As Jesse said, we had 2 or 3 budget committee meetings. I was at the Strategic Arts Committee meeting, the Social Emotional Wellbeing Committee meeting, the Grade Reform Committee meeting, and we're working on that. And that's going to be coming to fruition, I think, sometime soon. And Susanna and I were at the Boys and Girls State Luncheon along with Travis, who also went to Boys State. It's an incredible program that the American Legion puts on, and the stories that you hear, all of the students spoke about their experience, and it's so powerful and such a great program to help them learn about the way that government works, because they actually become a city, and then they have to run for office and all the different offices that run the city. And there were some pretty funny stories too. So that's just really a great program. I've gone for the last 3 years to those. And then I was at SLAM at San Ramon High School. Dr. Lori Watson, who puts on the SLAM program, is incredible. And it's such important work, and I'm so glad that we're doing it in all of our high schools. I hope at some point we can bring it to middle school. And I was also at the San Ramon Valley High School football game on Friday night in the end zone, watching San Ramon win. So that was a great night. Thanks.
I was not at the game to watch Cal lose, but that's okay. But they have a really great team this year too. So all the high schools have great teams. So I also got to do the Bring Your Adult to PE at Quail Run, and I was with the kindergarten classes, and it was kind of their first from what I understood, it was their first time with Coach Hallinan. I think usually the kindergarten teachers do PE for those students, so it was fun to see them kind of experience a coach kind of PE class. And she asked him, "Oh, do you have any older siblings?" And it was kind of fun to see how they connected with her. I went and Rachel, the 2 of us went to the Discovery Counseling Dundee night fundraiser on Saturday night at Doherty Valley, and it was super fun. We learned some new dance moves and and twirled and smiled with a lot of really beautiful people, and it was great. And the Run for Education was well attended, and it was really wonderful to see the community come out and support our educational foundation, which supports our school district. We had a couple of parent ed nights in this last month, so that I was at. We had the e-bike and scooter safety program, and these are presented by San Ramon Valley, the school district, and the PTSA. And so for the e-bike and scooter safety, I wanted to thank the Danville Police Chief, Alan Shields, and his team. They gave a very informative and enlightening parent ed night around e-scooters and e-bikes. And then we had a cyber and digital safety program that where a representative from the DA's office, I know he has a title, but Daryl Holcomb, and then our own Kelly Hilton presented about cybersecurity, and that was great. And then there's a student forum coming up too, I think on October 24th. So that's around that same kind of parent ed night type of thing. So that's my list. I guess that's it.